They say you can't save someone who's already decided to die. But what happens when death comes for you on a rain-soaked street and the hand that pulls you back belongs to a man more dangerous than the darkness itself? This is the story of Elena Brooks, a veterinarian who worked herself to the edge of oblivion, and Adrian Voss, a man who built an empire on secrets and blood. When their worlds collided in a storm that should have been her last breath, neither of them knew that survival was just the beginning. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The rain came down like punishment. Elena Brooks sat in her car outside the emergency veterinary clinic, engine off, hands still gripping the steering wheel, though she'd been parked for 5 minutes. Maybe 10. Time had gotten slippery somewhere around hour 14 of her shift. Or was it 16? She'd lost count after the Doberman with the ruptured spleen and the cat that had eaten God knows what and seized on the exam table while its owner screamed. Her hands were shaking. That wasn't new. They'd been shaking for weeks now. A fine tremor that made suturing harder than it should be, made her second-guess herself when she reached for instruments. She told herself it was exhaustion, easier than admitting what she already knew. The glucose monitor on her wrist buzzed. She glanced at it without really seeing the number. Too low. Or maybe too high. Did it matter anymore? Her phone lit up on the passenger seat. Dr. Reeves, the clinic director. She let it ring through to voicemail. She knew what he wanted. Someone had called in sick for the night shift, and Elena was the only one stupid enough to say yes. She'd already worked a double. Her body felt like it was held together with caffeine and spite. The phone rang again. She answered it. Brooks. Reeves's voice was tired in that particular way that meant he was about to ask for something unreasonable. I know you just finished, but Martinez went home with food poisoning and we've got a German Shepherd coming in that got hit by a car. Surgery candidate. I need someone who can handle it. Elena closed her eyes. The smart answer was no. The human answer was no. The answer that would keep her alive past 30 was no. I'll be there in 5. She hung up before he could thank her, before she could hear the relief in his voice, and hate herself even more for enabling this, for enabling all of it. The understaffing, the impossible hours, the constant expectation that she would simply absorb whatever the job demanded because she was young and single and had nothing better to do than slowly kill herself for animals that would never know her name. The thing was, she didn't have anything better to do. Elena grabbed her coffee from the cup holder, cold now, bitter, and drained it anyway. Her vision swam for a second, black spots dancing at the edges. She waited for them to clear, then got out of the car. The rain soaked through her scrubs in seconds. She'd forgotten her jacket, left it somewhere in the clinic, probably draped over a chair in the break room she hadn't seen in 8 hours. The cold felt good, actually, sharp, real. It cut through the fog in her head and made her feel almost human. She made it 3 steps before her legs stopped working. It wasn't dramatic. There was no warning, no moment of realization. 1 second she was walking, and the next the ground was rushing up to meet her and she couldn't remember how to stop it. Her knees hit the asphalt hard enough to split the fabric of her scrubs, hard enough that she should have felt pain, but there was nothing. Just a distant awareness that she was falling and couldn't stop. The glucose monitor was screaming now. She could hear it, tinny and insistent, somewhere far away. Her vision tunneled. The parking lot lights bled into long streaks of gold against the black sky, and she thought, absurdly, that it was almost pretty, like a painting, like something worth remembering. She didn't feel her head hit the ground. The first thing she became aware of was warmth, not the clammy, feverish heat of her own failing body, but something external, solid. She was being lifted, carried, held against something that felt like stone wrapped in fabric. Her head lolled against a chest that didn't move quite right. The breathing was too controlled, too measured, like whoever was carrying her had learned the rhythm of it rather than simply lived it. She tried to open her eyes, managed it halfway. Rain streaked across her vision, and above her was a face she couldn't quite focus on. Sharp features, pale skin, dark hair plastered to a forehead, eyes that didn't match the darkness around them. Don't. The voice was low, quiet, the kind of voice that didn't need to be raised to command attention. Don't try to move. She wasn't trying to move, she couldn't move. Her body had stopped listening to her somewhere around the time her blood sugar had bottomed out, and her brain had decided that consciousness was optional. Hospital, she managed to whisper. The word came out slurred, barely intelligible. Need. Hospital. No hospital. That should have scared her. Some part of her brain registered that it should scare her. Strange man, refusing medical care, carrying her somewhere unknown. But fear required energy she didn't have, and besides, she was fairly certain she was dying anyway. What difference did it make if it happened in a hospital or wherever this man was taking her? The rain stopped hitting her face. They'd gone inside somewhere. The air changed, became still and heavy, smelling faintly of old wood, and something else she couldn't place. Expensive. Everything smelled expensive, the way rich people's houses did, like money had a scent, and it was this. She was lowered onto something soft. A couch, maybe. Or a bed. The warmth disappeared as the man stepped back, and she made a sound she'd deny later, a small, pathetic noise of loss. Your glucose is at 42. His voice came from somewhere above her. When did you last eat? How did he know about her glucose? She tried to remember, tried to form words. Morning. Maybe. Toast. Maybe toast. He repeated it like he was cataloging the information, filing it away. And you worked how long? Double shift, supposed to do another. You were going to die in that parking lot. Yeah. The admission came easier than it should have. Probably. There was a pause. She managed to open her eyes again, got a better look at him this time. Tall. That was the first thing. Tall in a way that made the room feel smaller, made the space rearrange itself around him. Late 30s, maybe 40, with the kind of face that would photograph well in black and white, all angles and shadows and sharp lines. He wore a black coat that probably cost more than her car, and when he moved, it was with the economy of motion that came from absolute certainty. He was also holding a glucagon kit. How did you... She started, but he was already uncapping the needle. Your wrist monitor is connected to your phone. Your phone unlocked with your face when I picked you up. The emergency medical information was easily accessible. He knelt beside her with a fluid grace that seemed wrong for someone his size. This is going to hurt. It did. The injection burned going in and she gasped, her body trying to curl away from it even though she knew she needed it. His hand came to rest on her shoulder, not restraining, just grounding, keeping her present. Breathe, he said quietly. It will pass. She focused on breathing, in through her nose, out through her mouth, like she was coaching an animal through an examination. The burning faded to a dull ache, and slowly, infinitesimally, the fog in her head began to clear. There's juice on the table next to you. Drink it, all of it. Elena turned her head. Even that small movement took effort, and saw a glass of orange juice sweating condensation onto a very expensive-looking side table. She reached for it with shaking hands, managed to get it to her lips without spilling too much. The sweetness hit her system like a drug, and she could feel her body grabbing onto it, desperate. The man stood and moved away, giving her space. She tracked him with her eyes as she drank. He'd gone to stand by the window, looking out at the rain-dark city. From this angle, she could see his reflection in the glass, layered over the lights below. He looked like he was part of the skyline, built into it. Where am I? Her voice was still rough, but clearer now. Somewhere safe. That's not an answer. No, he agreed. It's not. Elena finished the juice and set the glass down carefully. Her hands were still shaking, but less now. The glucagon was working, pulling her back from the edge 1 second at a time. She should be grateful. She should be thankful that this stranger had found her, had known what to do, had bothered to do anything at all instead of leaving her to die in the rain. Instead, she was starting to get angry. Why didn't you take me to a hospital? He was quiet for a long moment, still looking out the window. When he finally spoke, his voice was measured. Because you would have been stabilized and released within a few hours, and you would have gone right back to the clinic and killed yourself on the next double shift. This seemed more efficient. The accuracy of that assessment stole her breath more effectively than the hypoglycemia had. You don't know me. I know that you worked a double shift while diabetic and didn't eat. I know that you answered the phone when your employer called, even though you were sitting in your car shaking. I know that you were planning to work another shift. He turned to face her then, and his eyes were a color she couldn't name in the dim light. Gray, maybe, or green, or something in between. I know that you're smart enough to know better and broken enough not to care. That's... She stopped. She couldn't call it wrong. It was too accurate to be wrong. You still should have taken me to a hospital. Should have, he agreed. Didn't. Elena tried to stand. Her legs were still unsteady, but they held. Barely. She looked around the room properly for the first time. High ceilings, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than her student loans, floor-to-ceiling windows that showed a view of the city she recognized. They were downtown, high up. This was a penthouse or something close to it. Who are you? Adrian Voss. He said it like she should know the name. She didn't. Or maybe she did. There was something familiar about it, something that pinged against her memory, but she couldn't place it. I'm calling a car, she said, reaching for her phone. It wasn't in her pocket. She looked around, spotted it on the coffee table next to where the juice had been. Your scrubs are soaked through, Adrian said calmly. You're still shocky. Your glucose is climbing but not stable. You can call a car if you want, or you can sit down, eat something, and let your body recover before you go back out into the rain. I don't know you. No, he agreed. But I didn't let you die. That should count for something. She wanted to argue, wanted to grab her phone and leave, wanted to walk out of this expensive apartment and back into her life where things made sense, where she understood the rules. But her legs were shaking again, and the thought of going back out into the cold made her want to cry, and she was so tired. So tired. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. Adrian was silent for long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally did, his voice was softer than before. Because I found you in the rain, and you looked like I felt. That answer didn't make sense. It also made perfect sense. Elena sat back down on the couch before her legs could make the decision for her. Okay, she said. Okay. The food arrived 20 minutes later. Thai takeout from a place that definitely didn't deliver to normal people's apartments. Pad see ew, spring rolls, tom yum soup that smelled like it could raise the dead. Elena ate mechanically at first, her body still in survival mode, and then with more awareness as the food settled into her stomach and her blood sugar continued to climb. Adrian sat across from her in a chair that looked like it belonged in a museum, eating nothing, watching her with the same quiet intensity he'd shown since he'd carried her in from the storm. You're not eating, she observed. I ate earlier. You're just going to watch me eat? Yes. There was no apology in his tone, no acknowledgement that this might be weird. Elena took another bite of noodles and tried to decide if she was uncomfortable or just too tired to care. So what now? She asked. You feed me and send me on my way? That depends. On what? On whether you plan to go back to the clinic tonight. Elena set down her fork. The answer should be no. The answer any sane person would give was no. She'd nearly died. Her body had literally shut down in a parking lot. Going back to work would be insane. They need me, she said. They'll manage. There's a German shepherd that got hit by a car. Surgery candidate. Doctor. Reeves can't handle it alone. Dr. Reeves managed before you and he'll manage after you. Adrian's voice was flat, factual. You are not irreplaceable. You are simply willing to be destroyed. The words hit harder than they should have. Elena looked down at her food, at the half-empty container that represented more money than she usually spent on a week's worth of groceries, and felt something crack in her chest. I'm a vet, she said quietly. It's what I do. No. You're a person who happens to be a veterinarian. There's a difference. You don't understand. I understand that you were lying in the rain dying, and your first conscious thought was that you needed to get back to work. I understand that you would rather kill yourself slowly than disappoint people who are already exploiting you. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes locked on hers. I understand that whatever you're running from, it's catching up. Elena's throat tightened. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, wanted to defend herself, but the words wouldn't come, because he wasn't wrong. He was painfully, brutally right, and hearing it said out loud by a stranger who had no reason to care made it real in a way it hadn't been before. I don't know how to stop, she whispered. Adrian was quiet for a moment, then, start by not going back tonight. The dog will live or die regardless of whether you're the one holding the scalpel. You are not responsible for every life that crosses your path. That's easy for you to say? No, he said softly. It's not. There was something in his voice, some edge of old pain that made her look up. He was watching her still, but his expression had shifted, become less neutral. She saw something there, recognition, maybe, or understanding. Whatever it was, it made him seem less like a statue and more like a person. You said I looked like how you felt, Elena said slowly. What did you mean? Adrian stood in one fluid motion, moving to the window again. His reflection looked back at her, layered over the city lights. That's a conversation for another time. We might not have another time. We will. He said it with absolute certainty, like he could see the future and knew exactly how it would unfold. But tonight, you need to rest. I should go home. You live 40 minutes from here in an apartment with no food in the refrigerator and a landlord who hasn't fixed the heating in 3 weeks. He glanced at her over his shoulder. Your phone, remember? I saw your messages while checking your medical information. Elena should have been angry about the privacy violation, should have been worried about how easily he'd accessed her life. Instead, she was just tired. You're very sure of yourself, she said. Yes. That must be nice. Something that might have been a smile crossed his face. It has its moments. Elena pulled her legs up onto the couch, wrapping her arms around her knees. The position was childish, defensive, but she didn't care. If I stay, I'm sleeping on this couch. The guest room has a better mattress. The couch. As you wish. He disappeared down a hallway and returned with blankets and a pillow that were softer than anything Elena owned. He set them on the arm of the couch without comment, then moved toward the hallway again. Adrian, she called out. He stopped, turned back to face her. Thank you, she said, for not letting me die. His expression was unreadable. Get some rest, Elena. He knew her name. She hadn't told him her name, but her phone would have had that too, she realized. Her phone would have had everything. She should leave. She should grab her things and call a car and get out of this strange apartment with the strange man who saved her life for reasons she didn't understand. She should go back to her life, to her job, to the steady spiral of self-destruction she'd been riding for months. Instead, she pulled the blankets over herself and closed her eyes. Elena woke to sunlight. For a few seconds, she couldn't remember where she was. The ceiling was wrong, too high, too clean. The light was wrong, too bright, coming from the wrong direction. The air smelled wrong, expensive and foreign instead of the familiar mustiness of her apartment. Then it came back. The rain. The collapse. Adrian. She sat up slowly, testing her body. The shakes were gone. Her head felt clear for the first time in weeks. Her glucose monitor showed 102, stable, normal, the kind of number she used to take for granted before she'd started treating her body like something disposable. There was a glass of water on the coffee table that hadn't been there when she'd fallen asleep, and next to it, a note written in precise, angular handwriting. There's food in the kitchen. Eat before you leave. No signature, no pleasantries, just instruction. Elena found the kitchen through a doorway she hadn't noticed the night before. It was as immaculate as the rest of the apartment, all clean lines and expensive appliances that looked like they'd never been used. On the counter was a paper bag from a bakery she recognized, one of those places that charged $12 for a croissant and was worth every penny. Inside the bag, a spinach and feta quiche, still warm, and a fruit salad in a container that had definitely been prepared by someone who knew what they were doing. She ate standing up, looking out the kitchen window at the city below. From up here, everything looked clean and ordered, like the chaos of street level didn't exist. She could see the clinic from here, or at least the neighborhood where it was. Somewhere down there, doctor. Reeves was probably drowning in appointments and silently cursing her for not coming in. She should feel guilty. She knew she should feel guilty. Instead, she felt something else. Something that might have been relief. Her phone buzzed. She'd plugged it in at some point during the night, or Adrian had, and it was fully charged now. 3 missed calls from Dr. Reeves, 2 from a coworker, and a string of texts asking where she was. She typed out a message. I'm sick. Won't be in today. Sorry. The lie came easily. Maybe too easily. She finished eating, washed her dishes, it seemed rude not to, and found her way to the bathroom to clean up. Her scrubs were still damp, still stained with rain and parking lot grime, but they'd have to do. Her reflection in the mirror looked better than it had in weeks. Still tired, still too thin, but alive. Definitely alive. She found Adrian in what she assumed was his office, a room dominated by a dark wood desk and more floor-to-ceiling windows. He was on a phone call, speaking in what sounded like Russian, his voice as controlled and measured as it had been the night before. He glanced up when she appeared in the doorway, made a small gesture that might have meant wait or might have meant come in, and continued his conversation. Elena waited. She studied the room while he talked, the bookshelves lined with titles in multiple languages, the single photograph on the desk too far away to make out clearly, the complete absence of anything personal or warm. It was the office of someone who wanted no one to know them. He ended the call and set the phone down with the same precise care he seemed to apply to everything. "You look better," he observed. "I feel better. Thank you for the food. You ate it all?" "Yes, Mom." Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or amusement. "Good. How's your glucose?" "Stable." "And you're going home now?" It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "Yes." "Not to the clinic?" "Not today." "Not this week," he said firmly. "Your body needs time to recover." "You're not my doctor." "No. I'm the person who found you dying in a parking lot. That gives me some credibility on the subject." Elena crossed her arms. "I appreciate what you did. Really, I do. But I can't just take a week off work." "Why not?" "Because they need me. They need a veterinarian, any veterinarian. You are not special in that regard." The word should have stung. Instead, they just made her angry. "You don't know anything about my job. I know that you're 27 years old, $80,000 in debt from veterinary school, and working at a clinic that pays you $45,000 a year while expecting you to pull 60-hour weeks. I know that you've lost 12 pounds in the last 2 months, and your A1C is trending in the wrong direction. I know that if you continue at this pace, you'll be dead before you're 30. He stood, moving around the desk to face her directly. "So yes, Elena, I know quite a bit about your job." She stared at him. "How do you know all that?" "Your phone, your medical records, your bank statements, all accessible through your unlocked phone and poorly secured cloud storage." That's... She couldn't find the word. Invasive, illegal, terrifying. That's a massive violation of privacy. "Yes," he agreed calmly. "It is. And you're just admitting it? I could lie. Would you prefer that?" Elena didn't know what she preferred. She didn't know anything about this man except that he'd saved her life and apparently had no qualms about hacking into her entire existence. "Who are you?" she asked again. "Really?" Adrian was quiet for a moment, studying her with those strange gray-green eyes. Someone who recognized what he saw in that parking lot. That's not an answer. "No," he agreed. "It's not." He moved to a cabinet along the wall, pulled out a business card and handed it to her. It was heavy stock, expensive, with a name and number printed in simple black font. No company, no title, just Adrian Voss and a phone number. "If you need anything," he said quietly, "call." "I won't need anything." "You will." Again, that absolute certainty. "And when you do, call." Elena pocketed the card without looking at it. "I should go." "I'll have a car take you home." "I can take the train." In wet scrubs, still recovering from a hypoglycemic episode? No. He picked up his phone, typed something quickly. "The car will be here in 5 minutes." She wanted to argue, wanted to assert some kind of independence, some proof that she was fine and didn't need help from strange men in expensive apartments. But the truth was, she was tired and her body still felt fragile, and the thought of navigating the train system right now made her want to cry. "Thank you," she said instead. "You already thanked me." "Well, I'm thanking you again." That flicker of something, amusement maybe, crossed his face again. "You're welcome." The car was a black sedan with leather seats and a driver who didn't ask questions. Elena gave her address and sat back, watching the city slide by through tinted windows. The rain had stopped, leaving everything wet and gleaming in the morning sun. Her phone buzzed. "Dr. Reeves, feel better. Let me know when you can come back." No concern about how she was feeling. No questions about what kind of sick. Just, when could she come back? She thought about Adrian's words. "You are not irreplaceable. You are simply willing to be destroyed." Her fingers found the business card in her pocket. She pulled it out, studied the number printed there. A simple card from a not simple man who'd saved her life and violated her privacy and somehow made her feel more seen than anyone had in years. She shouldn't call. She should throw the card away, go back to her life, forget this ever happened. Adrian Voss was clearly dangerous in ways she didn't understand, clearly operating on a level far removed from her world of student debt and double shifts. She tucked the card carefully into her wallet instead. Boss. The week passed in a strange suspension. Elena called in sick for 3 days, then claimed a family emergency for 2 more. Dr. Reeves sounded annoyed but didn't push. Her coworkers sent sympathetic texts that felt obligatory rather than genuine. She slept. She ate. She monitored her glucose and took her insulin and treated her body like something worth maintaining instead of something to be used up. She thought about Adrian Voss more than she should have. On the 6th day, her doorbell rang at 7 in the morning. She opened it to find a delivery, a box from a meal service she'd never heard of, containing a week's worth of pre-portioned, nutritionally balanced meals with a note, "Eat." V. No explanation for how he had her address, no acknowledgement that sending meals to someone you'd met once was weird, just instruction and expectation that she'd comply. She should have been creeped out, should have been worried. Instead, she found herself smiling as she unpacked the meals into her refrigerator. On the 8th day, she went back to work. Dr. Reeves greeted her with relief and immediately loaded her schedule with back-to-back appointments. By hour 3, she was exhausted. By hour 6, her hands were shaking again. She made it through the shift. Barely. Drove home in a daze and sat in her car in the parking lot, staring at nothing. Her phone was in her hand before she'd made a conscious decision. She pulled up Adrian's number, typed out a message. "I don't know how to do this." The reply came within seconds. "Do what?" "Keep going." Another quick response. "Then stop." She stared at those 2 words, "then stop," like it was simple, like she could just stop. Her phone rang. Adrian's number. She answered. "Hello? Are you home?" His voice was as calm and measured as she remembered. "Yes." "Are you safe?" "Physically?" "Yes." "That's not what I asked." Elena closed her eyes. "No, I'm not safe. I'll be there in 20 minutes. You don't know where I live." "Yes, I do. Remember?" She should tell him not to come. Should handle this herself like an adult. Instead, she said, "Okay." He hung up without goodbye. Elena sat in her car and waited and tried not to think about what it meant that a stranger's arrival felt more like safety than anything in her actual life. Adrian's car was nicer than the one he'd sent for her before, sleek and black and probably worth more than her entire life savings. He pulled up next to her beat-up Honda with its check engine light and rusted bumper, and the contrast was almost funny. He got out, moved to her passenger door, and slid in without waiting for invitation. "Tell me," he said. So she did. She told him about the shift, about the exhaustion, about the way her body had started shaking around hour 6 and hadn't stopped. She told him about Dr. Reeves' casual expectation that she'd make up for lost time, about the coworker who'd made a snide comment about her vacation, about the crushing weight of knowing that this was her life, and it wasn't going to get better. Adrian listened without interrupting, his expression neutral, but his attention absolute. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You need to quit." "I can't quit. I have loans. I have bills." "You have loans and bills and a job that's killing you. One of those things needs to change." It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. You're choosing to stay in a situation that's destroying you because leaving feels impossible. But impossible and difficult aren't the same thing. Elena laughed, but it came out bitter. "Easy for you to say. You're clearly rich. You don't understand what it's like to have nothing?" He interrupted quietly. "To have to choose between eating and surviving? To do things you hate for people who don't care if you live or die because the alternative is worse? His eyes met hers. You're right. I don't understand that anymore. But I did once. She heard something in his voice. Old pain, old rage, old survival. What happened? I learned that sometimes the only way to stop drowning is to burn the boat. That's not helpful advice. No, he agreed, but it's true. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the ticking of her car's cooling engine. Elena felt exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. I don't know how to burn the boat, she said finally. Adrian reached into his jacket and pulled out a phone. Not his regular phone, a different one, simpler. He unlocked it, typed something, and handed it to her. On the screen was a job listing. Private veterinarian for an estate, live-in position, salary that was triple what she made now, full benefits, reasonable hours. What is this? She asked. An option. Whose estate? Does it matter? She looked at the listing again. It was too good to be true, which meant it probably was. This is fake, she said. No. No one pays this much for a vet. Someone does. Elena handed the phone back. I'm not taking charity. It's not charity. It's a job that needs filling and a person who needs work. The fact that I'm facilitating the connection doesn't make it charity. Why are you doing this? He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw something in his face she hadn't seen before. Something almost like vulnerability. Because I found you in the rain, he said quietly, and I'm not ready to let you drown. The honesty of it stole her breath. She didn't know what to say, didn't know how to process the fact that this stranger cared more about her survival than anyone in her actual life. I need to think about it, she managed. Think about it. But Elena? He waited until she met his eyes. Think quickly. Your body doesn't have much time left. He got out of the car, returned to his own, and drove away, leaving her sitting in the parking lot with a phone number in her wallet and a decision she didn't know how to make. She lasted 3 more days at the clinic. On the 3rd day, a cat died on her table. It shouldn't have. The surgery was routine, the cat was healthy, everything should have been fine. But her hands had been shaking, and she'd nicked an artery she should have seen, and by the time she'd gotten the bleeding under control, it was too late. The owner screamed at her. Dr. Reeves looked disappointed. Her coworker muttered something about coming back too soon. Elena walked to the bathroom, locked herself in a stall, and called the number on Adrian's card. He answered on the first ring. Elena. The job, she said. Her voice sounded strange, distant. Is it still available? Yes. I'll take it. Good. Can you work through the end of the week? No. There was a pause, then, what happened? I killed a cat. The words came out flat, emotionless. I killed a cat because my hands were shaking and I wasn't paying attention, and now it's dead and I can't do this anymore. Where are you? The clinic, bathroom. Leave, now, don't talk to anyone. Just get in your car and leave. I can't just… Elena. His voice was firm but not harsh. Leave. I'll handle the rest. She didn't argue, didn't question. She walked out of the bathroom, past Dr. Reeves' office, past her coworkers, past the exam room where the cat's owner was still crying. She got in her car and drove away, and she didn't look back. Her phone rang while she was driving. Adrian. Where are you going? He asked. Home, I guess. No, come here. I don't know where here is. He gave her an address. The same building as before, the same penthouse she'd woken up in after the rain. I'll be there in 30 minutes, she said. I'll be waiting. He was waiting in the lobby when she arrived, looking completely out of place among the marble and gold trim. Or maybe not out of place. Maybe he was exactly where he belonged, and everything else had arranged itself around him. He guided her to the elevator without a word, used a key to access the penthouse floor, and led her back to the apartment she remembered. Sit, he said, gesturing to the couch. She sat. He disappeared into the kitchen, returned with water and something that looked like a protein bar. Eat. I'm not hungry. Eat anyway. She ate. It tasted like cardboard, but her blood sugar was probably dropping anyway, and fighting him seemed like too much effort. Tell me what happened, Adrian said, settling into the chair across from her. So she told him. All of it. The surgery, the mistake, the death. The way Dr. Reeves had looked at her like she was incompetent, the way the owner had screamed, the way she'd felt nothing because there was nothing left to feel. I killed it, she finished quietly. I was so tired and shaky, and I wasn't careful enough, and I killed it. You made a mistake, Adrian said, while working in conditions that should never have been allowed. That's not the same thing. The cat is still dead. Yes, and that's a tragedy. But it's a tragedy caused by a system that exploited you until you broke, not by any failing on your part. I should have been more careful. You should have been rested. You should have been healthy. You should have been working for people who cared about your well-being. None of those things were true, and none of them were your fault. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to take responsibility, to flagellate herself with guilt until it felt like enough. But she was so tired, and Adrian's words made a kind of sense that her own spiraling thoughts didn't. What happens now? She asked. Now you rest. Tomorrow we'll handle the logistics of your new position. The day after you move to the estate. That fast? Unless you want to stay in your apartment with its broken heating and your job that just cost you your last piece of humanity? She didn't. She really didn't. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. Adrian stood. The guest room is made up. Stay as long as you need. I can't just stay here. Why not? Because... She trailed off. Because it was weird? Because she barely knew him? Because accepting help felt like admitting defeat? None of those reasons felt adequate. Because you're used to handling everything alone, Adrian finished for her. I understand, but you don't have to anymore. The kindness in his voice broke something in her. Elena felt tears start to fall, and then she was crying, really crying, the kind of crying she hadn't allowed herself in months. All the exhaustion, all the fear, all the crushing weight of trying to survive when survival felt impossible. Adrian didn't move, didn't try to comfort her or tell her it would be okay. He just let her cry. Let her break down without making it about him, without needing her to be strong or composed or anything other than what she was. When the crying finally subsided, he handed her a box of tissues that had appeared from somewhere. Thank you, she managed. The guest room is the second door on the left. There are clothes in the closet that should fit. Tomorrow, we'll figure everything else out. He left her there, and Elena sat on the expensive couch in the expensive apartment belonging to a man she barely knew. And for the first time in months, she felt like maybe, she might actually survive this. She woke up the next morning to the smell of coffee and something cooking. For a moment she thought she was dreaming, but no. This was real. The soft sheets, the sunlight through unfamiliar windows, the sounds of another person moving around in the kitchen. She found Adrian at the stove, cooking what looked like an omelet with the same precise focus he seemed to apply to everything. He glanced up when she entered. There's coffee, he said, nodding toward a French press on the counter. Elena poured herself a cup and leaned against the counter, watching him cook. He moved efficiently, no wasted motion, like he'd done this 1,000 times. You cook, she observed. Sometimes. You don't seem like someone who cooks. What do I seem like? Someone who has people to cook for them. I do, but sometimes I prefer to do things myself. He plated the omelet and set it in front of her with a fork. It was perfect, fluffy, filled with vegetables and cheese, probably the best omelet she'd ever seen. Thank you, she said. He nodded and poured his own coffee, then leaned against the opposite counter, mirroring her posture. We need to discuss the job, he said. Okay. The estate is about an hour outside the city. Large property, several horses, some exotic animals that need specialized care. The owner values privacy and discretion. Who's the owner? Adrian sipped his coffee. Me. Elena nearly choked on her omelet. You? Yes. You have horses? And other animals. The previous veterinarian retired. I need someone I can trust. You barely know me. I know enough. She set down her fork. Why didn't you just tell me this from the beginning? Would you have accepted if you'd known? He had a point. She probably would have refused, would have seen it as charity, or worse. This is still charity, she said. No. This is me hiring someone qualified for a position that needs filling. The fact that I found you in a parking lot is incidental. Nothing about you is incidental. That almost smile flickered across his face again. True. Elena picked up her fork, took another bite of omelet. Her mind was racing, trying to process this new information. Adrian Voss had an estate, with horses and exotic animals, and he wanted to hire her to care for them. What kind of exotic animals? She asked. 2 leopards, a handful of parrots, some reptiles. Nothing you haven't been trained to handle. Leopards. Rescues. They're well socialized but require regular medical monitoring. You have pet leopards. I wouldn't call them pets. Elena laughed. Actually laughed, for the first time in weeks. This is insane. Is that a no? She looked at him. This strange, controlled man who'd saved her life and invaded her privacy and was now offering her a job taking care of his rescue leopards. None of it made sense. All of it felt right. When do I start? She asked. Something in Adrian's expression shifted. Relief, maybe, or satisfaction. Today, if you're ready. Tomorrow, if you need time. I don't have anything to pack. Everything I own fits in my car. Then today. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a set of keys. These are for the property. There's a cottage on the grounds, fully furnished, yours for as long as you work there. You'll have full access to the clinic facilities and ordering system for supplies. My staff will help you get acclimated. Elena took the keys. They were heavy, old-fashioned, the kind that opened real locks instead of electronic systems. Adrian, she said quietly, why are you really doing this? He was silent for a long moment, looking into his coffee cup like it held answers. Because, he finally said, everyone deserves a chance to stop drowning. It wasn't a complete answer, but it was enough. The drive to the estate took exactly 53 minutes. Adrian led the way in his black sedan, Elena following in her beat-up Honda. They left the city behind, traded skyscrapers for trees, traded noise for quiet. The estate appeared around a curve in the road, high walls, ornate gates that opened automatically as Adrian's car approached. Elena followed him through, and her breath caught. The property was enormous. The main house looked like something out of a European architectural digest, all stone and elegance. But Adrian didn't stop there. He led her past the main house, down a tree-lined drive, to a smaller building that still managed to look impossibly charming. The cottage. Elena parked and got out, staring. It was perfect. Stone exterior with climbing vines, a red door, windows that looked out onto gardens she couldn't quite see the edges of. This is mine? She asked as Adrian approached. This is yours. He handed her the keys and gestured for her to open it. The door swung open to reveal a space that managed to be both cozy and spacious. Hardwood floors, comfortable furniture, a kitchen that was small but fully equipped. Through another doorway she could see a bedroom with a bed that looked impossibly soft. I'll leave you to settle in, Adrian said. The clinic is a 10-minute walk from here. Follow the path past the garden. I'll meet you there in an hour to show you around. He left before she could respond, and Elena stood in the doorway of her new home, trying to process how her life had changed so completely in less than 2 weeks. The clinic was everything she'd dreamed of when she'd started vet school. Clean, well-organized, stocked with equipment that actually worked. Adrian gave her the tour himself, pointing out the surgery suite, the recovery area, the extensive pharmacy. Most of your work will be routine, he explained. Regular checkups, occasional minor procedures. The leopards need monthly blood work. The horses need monitoring. One has a chronic condition that requires medication. And emergencies? Rare, but they happen. You'll have my number. I'm usually on the property. They walked the grounds after, Adrian pointing out various animals. The horses were beautiful, clearly expensive, clearly well cared for. The leopards were in a massive enclosure that was more like a natural habitat than a cage, lounging in the sun like oversized house cats. They were rescued from a private collector who was keeping them in a basement, Adrian explained, watching them. It took 2 years of rehabilitation before they could be moved here. You did that? I funded it. Elena watched the leopards, watched the way they moved with lazy grace through their carefully constructed world. You save things, she said quietly. Sometimes. Is that what you're doing with me? Adrian turned to look at her. I'm giving you a chance to save yourself. There's a difference. They walked back to the cottage in comfortable silence. At her door, Adrian paused. If you need anything, he said, call. You keep saying that. Because I mean it. He started to leave, then stopped, turned back. Elena, he said quietly, you made the right choice. Coming here. How do you know? Because you're still alive to question it. He left her there, and Elena went inside her cottage and sat on her comfortable couch and tried to understand what had just happened to her life. She'd quit her job, left the city, moved to an estate owned by a man she barely knew to take care of exotic animals and horses. It should have felt reckless, dangerous, wrong. Instead, it felt like the first real breath she'd taken in months. Her phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Reeves. We need to talk about your sudden departure. Elena deleted it without responding. Another message. This one from Adrian. Eat something. Your blood sugar drops when you're stressed. She smiled despite herself and went to explore her new kitchen. The first week passed in a blur of routine that felt anything but routine. Elena woke with the sun, checked on the horses before breakfast, spent her mornings in the clinic organizing supplies and familiarizing herself with each animal's medical history. The leopards, Zara and Mikhail, she learned, watched her with intelligent golden eyes whenever she approached their enclosure, curious but not threatening. She saw Adrian in passing. He'd appear at the stables while she was examining one of the horses, or she'd find him in the clinic office reviewing supply orders. Their conversations were brief, professional. He'd ask about the animals, she'd report on their conditions, and then he'd disappear back to the main house or into one of the black cars that came and went at odd hours. It should have been strange. It was strange. But Elena was too busy relearning how to exist without exhaustion to question it too deeply. On the 8th day, she found him in the leopard enclosure. She'd come to do Zara's monthly blood work and stopped short at the sight of Adrian sitting on the ground, his back against a tree, while Mikhail lounged beside him like an oversized house cat. The leopard's head rested on Adrian's thigh, and Adrian's hand moved absently through the spotted fur. You're early, Adrian said without looking up. Elena checked her watch. I'm exactly on time. Zara's in the far corner. She saw you coming and decided to make you work for it. Sure enough, the female leopard was watching from beneath a rocky outcropping, her tail flicking with what Elena was starting to recognize as amusement. Does he always do that? Elena asked, nodding at Mikhail. Only when he wants something. What does he want? Usually food, sometimes just attention. Adrian's hand stilled on the leopard's head. Today I think he's bored. Elena moved carefully into the enclosure, keeping her movement slow and predictable. Zara watched, but didn't move. Mikhail's eyes tracked her, but he stayed pressed against Adrian. I need to take him first, Elena said. Zara won't come while he's here. Adrian made a low sound, not quite words, more like a rumble from deep in his chest. Mikhail's ears twitched, and then he was standing, stretching with feline grace before padding toward Elena with deliberate casualness. How did you do that? Elena asked. He understands Russian. The leopard understands Russian. The leopard was raised by a Russian trainer who only spoke to him in Russian. So yes. Elena knelt as Mikhail approached, letting him sniff her extended hand before reaching for the portable blood draw kit she'd brought. The leopard submitted to the procedure with better grace than most house cats, only his tail lashing betraying any irritation. Good boy, Elena murmured as she finished pressing gauze to the tiny puncture. You're easier than my last patient. What was your last patient? A chihuahua that tried to remove my fingers. Adrian stood, brushing dirt from his pants. I'll get Zara. He moved deeper into the enclosure, and Elena watched as the female leopard rose from her hiding spot and approached him with obvious affection. He crouched, let her bump her head against his shoulder, and murmured something too quiet for Elena to hear. Zara made a sound that was almost a purr. She likes you, Elena observed as Adrian guided the leopard toward her. We have an understanding. Elena prepared the second blood draw, while Adrian kept Zara calm with a hand on her shoulder and what sounded like Russian endearments. The leopard tolerated the needle with slightly less patience than her companion, but she didn't try to bite anyone, which Elena counted as a win. All done, she said, labeling the samples. I'll run these this afternoon. Adrian released Zara, who immediately bounded away to tackle Mikhail in what looked like play, but was probably practice for actual violence. They tumbled together, all teeth and claws that somehow never seemed to connect. They're good together, Elena said, watching them. They'd kill each other if they were alone. She glanced at him. That's dark. It's true. Leopards are solitary. Keeping two together only works because they were raised as a pair and have enough space to avoid each other when they need to. He started walking toward the gate, and Elena fell into step beside him. Remove either element, the bond or the space, and it falls apart. They walked in silence for a moment before Elena asked, "Is that a metaphor?" Everything is a metaphor if you think about it hard enough. That's not an answer. No, he agreed. It's not. They'd reached the clinic. Adrian held the door for her, followed her inside. Elena set the blood samples in the storage cooler and turned to find him watching her with that same quiet intensity he always seemed to carry. "What?" she asked. "You look better than when you found me dying in a parking lot. That's a low bar. Then a week ago, you've gained weight. The tremor in your hands is gone. You're sleeping." Elena crossed her arms, suddenly self-conscious. "You're very observant. It's necessary in my line of work." "Which is what, exactly?" Adrian's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air between them. "I thought you weren't interested in knowing." "I wasn't. I am now." He was quiet for a long moment, studying her. Then, "I manage investments, property, mostly, some other ventures." It was a lie. Or not a lie, exactly, but not the whole truth. Elena could hear it in the careful neutrality of his tone, see it in the way he held himself, ready for her to push, ready to deflect. She thought about the cars that came and went at odd hours, the way staff appeared and disappeared without introduction, the fact that a man who managed investments had a sprawling estate with rescue leopards and spoke Russian to them in the dark. "Okay," she said. Adrian's eyebrows rose fractionally. "Okay? You don't want to tell me. I'm not going to push." She moved to the sink, began washing her hands. "You saved my life. You gave me a job when I needed one. Whatever else you do is your business. That's remarkably trusting. Or remarkably self-interested. I like it here. I like the work. I like not feeling like I'm dying." She dried her hands, turned to face him. "Whatever you're involved in, as long as it doesn't affect the animals or put me in danger, I don't need to know." Adrian watched her for a long moment, and Elena had the distinct impression she was being evaluated, tested maybe, though for what she couldn't say. "You're not what I expected," he said finally. "What did you expect?" More questions. More fear. Elena leaned against the counter. "I'm too tired to be afraid, and questions only matter if you're planning to answer them." That almost smile flickered across his face. "Fair enough." Her glucose monitor buzzed. She glanced at it, made a face. "Dropping?" Adrian asked. "A little. I should eat." "There's food at the house. Come." It wasn't an invitation. It was an instruction, delivered with the same calm certainty that seemed to characterize everything Adrian did. Elena should have bristled at it, should have asserted some kind of independence. Instead, she followed him out of the clinic and up the path toward the main house. She'd only seen the exterior before, imposing stone and elegant architecture that suggested old money and older secrets. Inside was just as impressive. High ceilings, dark wood, art that was probably worth more than Elena's entire education. But it didn't feel cold. Someone had lived here, really lived here, and left traces of themselves in the worn rug in the hallway and the books stacked on every available surface. Adrian led her to a kitchen that was somehow both modern and rustic, all stainless steel appliances and butcher block counters. He moved to the refrigerator with the same efficiency he brought to everything, pulling out containers and setting them on the counter. "Sit," he said, nodding toward the breakfast bar. Elena sat. He assembled food with practiced ease. Cheese, bread, fruit, some kind of spreadable meat that looked expensive. Set it in front of her with a glass of juice and then leaned against the opposite counter, watching. "You're doing it again," Elena said around a bite of bread. "Doing what?" "Watching me eat." "You don't eat enough on your own." "How would you know? You're not in my cottage." "Your grocery orders are minimal. Your trash collection shows mostly packaging from prepared meals. You're eating but not cooking, which means you're not eating well. Elena set down her bread. That's either very observant or very creepy. Both. Most people would deny the creepy part. I'm not most people. Yeah, Elena said quietly. I'm starting to figure that out. She ate in silence for a while, and Adrian let her, his presence somehow both watchful and unobtrusive. When she'd finished half of what he'd put out, he moved the rest away without comment. Thank you, she said. You're welcome. Elena's phone buzzed. She pulled it out, saw a message from a number she didn't recognize. We know where you are. Her blood went cold. What is it? Adrian's voice was sharp, his attention suddenly focused. Elena showed him the phone. His expression didn't change, but she saw his jaw tighten fractionally. When did this start? Just now. I don't know this number. Adrian took her phone, did something with it too fast for her to follow, then handed it back. It's a burner. Untraceable. Has anyone else contacted you? Anyone from your old life? Dr. Reeves tried calling a few times. I didn't answer. Anyone else? Elena thought back through the past week. A coworker texted asking where I'd gone. I told her I'd found a new position. That's it. Adrian pulled out his own phone, typed something quickly. You're going to get some strange calls over the next few days. Don't answer anything from a number you don't recognize. If you get another text like this, show me immediately. Adrian, what's going on? He looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something like concern in his expression. Probably nothing, but I don't take chances with threats. You think someone's threatening me? I think someone sent you a message designed to scare you. Whether they have the capability to act on it is a different question. Elena's hands were shaking again. Not from low blood sugar this time. Is this about you? About whatever you really do? Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then, possibly. Or it could be someone from your old clinic angry about how you left. Or a random scam. I won't know until I know more. That's not reassuring. It's not meant to be reassuring. It's meant to be honest. He moved closer, his voice softening. You're safe here. The property is secure. My staff is trained. Nothing will happen to you. You can't promise that. Yes, he said quietly. I can. There was something in his tone, absolute certainty backed by something harder. Elena looked at him, really looked at him, and saw past the careful neutrality to the steel underneath. Adrian Voss was dangerous. She'd suspected it before, but now she knew it. The strange thing was, it didn't scare her as much as it should have. Okay, she said. Okay? I trust you. Adrian's expression shifted, surprise maybe, or something deeper. You shouldn't. Probably not, but I do anyway. He held her gaze for a long moment, and Elena saw something flicker in those gray-green eyes. Something almost like pain. I need to make some calls, he said abruptly. Stay in the main house until I come back. Adrian, please. The words sounded like it cost him something. Stay here. He left without waiting for her answer, and Elena sat alone in the expensive kitchen, trying to understand what she'd just agreed to. The hours passed slowly. Elena explored the house, or the parts of it that seemed accessible. A library with floor-to-ceiling shelves, most of the books in languages she couldn't read. A sitting room with windows that overlooked the gardens. A music room with a piano that looked like it had been played recently. She found herself drawn back to the library. The books were organized by language rather than subject. Russian in one section, French in another, German, Italian, something that might have been Arabic. The English section was smallest, tucked in a corner like an afterthought. She pulled a volume at random. Poetry. Russian, with English translations on facing pages. Someone had made notes in the margins, small, precise handwriting that matched the note Adrian had left her that first morning. Elena was reading when she heard footsteps. She looked up to find Adrian in the doorway, his expression carefully blank in a way that made her nervous. You read Russian poetry? He asked. No, but you do. I read a lot of things. The annotations are yours. Yes. Elena closed the book, set it carefully back on the shelf. Did you find out who sent the message? No, but I've taken steps to ensure it won't happen again. What kind of steps? The kind you don't need to worry about. Elena crossed her arms. Every time you say I don't need to worry, I worry more. Then I'll stop saying it. Adrian moved into the room, his presence somehow filling the space. Your phone is secure now. Your cottage has been upgraded. If anyone tries to contact you directly, I'll know. That's surveillance. Yes. You're not even trying to make it sound better. Would you prefer I lie? Elena thought about it. No, I wouldn't. Good. Because I'm not going to. They stood in silence for a moment, the space between them charged with something Elena couldn't name. Adrian was watching her again, but differently this time, like he was trying to figure something out. You should know, he said finally, that being associated with me comes with risks. People who want to hurt me might try to use you to do it. That message was likely just a probe, someone testing to see if you're important to me. Am I? The question was out before Elena could stop it. Adrian's expression didn't change, but she saw something flicker in his eyes. That's a dangerous question. You're the one who brought it up. So I did. He moved closer, stopping just at the edge of her personal space. Yes, Elena, you're important to me, which means you're now a potential target, which means I need to know if you want to stay or leave. Elena's heart was pounding. If I leave, I'll make sure you're set up somewhere safe. Different city, new identity if necessary. You'll have enough money to start over. And if I stay, you accept that there are things about my life I can't tell you. You accept that there may be danger. You accept that I will do whatever is necessary to keep you safe, even if you don't like the methods. It should have been an easy choice. Leave, start over, get away from whatever darkness Adrian carried with him. But Elena thought about the cottage, about the leopards, about the way her hands had stopped shaking and her body had stopped breaking down. She thought about Adrian carrying her out of the rain, about the careful way he watched her eat, about the annotations in Russian poetry books. I'm staying, she said. Adrian's eyes searched her face. You don't know what you're agreeing to. No, but I know what I'm leaving behind, and I'd rather deal with unknown danger than certain death. That's not a reassuring reason. It's an honest one. Something that might have been a smile touched Adrian's mouth. You have a habit of saying things that make it difficult to argue with you. Good. Stop trying to protect me by pushing me away. That's not what I'm doing. Yes, it is. Adrian was quiet for a moment, then, You're right, it is. The admission surprised her. Elena moved closer, closing the distance between them until she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the shadow of stubble along his jaw. Why? She asked quietly. Because everyone I've ever cared about either left or died, usually because of me. The honesty in his voice was almost painful. Elena reached out, her hand hovering near his arm, not quite touching. I'm not leaving. You say that now. I say that now, and I'll say it tomorrow and the day after that until you believe me. Adrian's hand came up, caught hers, held it in a grip that was gentle despite the strength she could feel there. You should be afraid of me. Probably. I'm not. You should be running. I'm staying. Elena? She stepped into his space, her free hand coming to rest against his chest. She could feel his heartbeat, steady and strong beneath her palm. I'm staying, Adrian. Stop trying to save me from yourself. He looked down at her, and Elena saw the moment something broke in him. His hand tightened on hers, his other arm coming around her waist, pulling her close. I don't know how to do this, he said quietly. I don't know how to have something good without destroying it. Then we'll figure it out together. Adrian's forehead came to rest against hers, and they stood like that, breathing each other's air, suspended in a moment that felt both fragile and inevitable. I'm going to hurt you, he whispered, not intentionally, but my life, it hurts people. I know. And you're still staying. I'm still staying. He kissed her then, soft at first, questioning, like he was afraid she'd break. But Elena had been breaking for months, and she was so tired of being fragile. She kissed him back with everything she had, pouring all her fear and relief and stubborn hope into the contact. Adrian made a sound low in his throat and pulled her closer, the kiss deepening into something that felt like surrender, like maybe he'd been trying to push her away and she'd finally worn down his defenses. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian's hand came up to cup her face with surprising tenderness. "This is a terrible idea," he said. "Probably. I'm going to try to protect you anyway." "I know. And you're going to argue with me about it." "Constantly." That almost smile became a real one, transforming his face into something almost boyish. "You're impossible. You're overbearing. We're going to be a disaster." "Probably," Elena agreed. "But at least we'll be a disaster together." Adrian kissed her again, softer this time, and Elena felt something settle in her chest. Something that might have been hope, or might have been certainty, or might have been the simple understanding that whatever came next, she wouldn't be facing it alone. The days that followed developed a new rhythm. Elena worked with the animals. Adrian appeared and disappeared on business he didn't explain, and the nights found them together, sometimes in the library, sometimes in the main house kitchen, once memorably in the leopard enclosure where they sat against opposite trees and talked while Zara and Mikhail pretended to hunt each other. Elena learned things. Adrian spoke 5 languages fluently and could read 3 more. He'd grown up in Moscow, come to America when he was 17, and built something from nothing through means he still wouldn't specify. He loved classical music but couldn't carry a tune. He was left-handed but had trained himself to write with his right after an injury. He took his coffee black and his tea with honey. Adrian learned things too. Elena had wanted to be a marine biologist before practical concerns and student debt had steered her toward veterinary medicine. She'd been alone most of her life. Not lonely, exactly, just alone. Her parents had died when she was 20, leaving her with nothing but debt and a work ethic that had nearly killed her. She hated mushrooms and loved thunderstorms and could quote entire episodes of obscure nature documentaries. They didn't talk about the things that mattered, what Adrian really did, who had sent that message, what they were building between them, but they talked about everything else, and somehow that felt like enough. 3 weeks in, Elena woke to the sound of cars. Not the usual 1 or 2 vehicles that came and went, but several, their engines cutting through the early morning quiet. She checked her phone, 4 a.m., and got dressed quickly. The main house was lit up. Through the windows she could see figures moving, shadows against the warm interior light. Elena hesitated, then walked up the path. Adrian met her at the door before she could knock. He looked different, dressed in all black, his expression harder than she'd ever seen it. "Go back to the cottage," he said. No warmth, no softness, just command. "What's happening?" "Nothing you need to be involved in. Go back." Elena held her ground. "Is it about the message? About me?" "No, this is something else. Elena, please." "Then I'm staying." Adrian's jaw tightened. Behind him, a man appeared, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that suggested he'd seen and done things Elena couldn't imagine. He spoke in rapid Russian, too fast for her to catch more than a word or two. Adrian answered in the same language, his tone sharp. The man glanced at Elena, said something that made Adrian's expression darken, and disappeared back into the house. "What did he say?" Elena asked. "Nothing important." "Adrian, he said you shouldn't be here. He said I'm being careless. He said—" Adrian stopped, running a hand through his hair in the first sign of frustration she'd ever seen from him. "He said that having you here makes me vulnerable." "Is he right?" "Yes." The admission hung between them. Elena could hear voices from inside the house, urgent and low. Whatever was happening, it was serious. "I should leave," she said quietly. "No." Adrian's hand caught her arm. "I mean, yes, you should go back to the cottage, but don't leave. Don't—" He stopped, his grip gentling. "Please, don't leave." Elena looked up at him and saw something she hadn't seen before. Fear. Not for himself, but for her. "Okay," she said. "I'll go back. But Adrian, when this is over, whatever this is, I want the truth. You won't like it. I don't care. I want it anyway." He pulled her close, kissed her hard and fast, then stepped back. "Go. Lock your doors. Don't answer for anyone but me." Elena went. She spent the next 6 hours in her cottage, watching the sun rise and trying not to imagine what was happening in the main house. The cars left one by one. Silence returned. Her phone stayed quiet. At noon, there was a knock at her door. She looked through the window first, Adrian alone, looking exhausted. She let him in. "It's handled," he said without preamble. What was it? Adrian moved to her couch and sat, his whole body radiating weariness. Business. A situation that required my attention. That's not an answer. No, it's not. Elena sat beside him. You promised me the truth. I promised to consider giving you the truth. There's a difference. Adrian, I run an organization, he said abruptly. We move money, mostly. Some property acquisition, some logistics. It's not legal. Most of it operates in spaces where legality is complicated, but the simple version is that I'm a criminal. Elena absorbed this. She'd suspected, obviously, but hearing it said plainly was different. What kind of criminal? The kind who moves money for people who can't use traditional banking. The kind who facilitates transactions that need to stay invisible. The kind who occasionally has to deal with people who forget that agreements are binding. Is that what happened this morning? Someone forgot an agreement? Someone tried to renegotiate terms that weren't negotiable. It's been addressed. Elena looked at his hands, saw bruised knuckles he hadn't had yesterday. Did you kill anyone? No, but I hurt someone, several someones. She should have been horrified, should have been running for the door. Instead, she found herself asking, did they deserve it? Adrian's eyes met hers, and she saw something almost like surprise there. Does it matter? Yes. He was quiet for a long moment. They threatened to kill a family if their debts weren't forgiven. A family with 3 children under the age of 10. So yes, Elena, they deserved it. Elena reached for his hand, the one with the bruised knuckles, and held it gently. Okay. Okay? I told you I was staying. This doesn't change that. You just found out I'm a criminal who hurt people this morning, and you're saying it doesn't change anything? You're a criminal who hurt people who threaten children. There's a difference. Adrian laughed, actually laughed, but it sounded pained. You have a remarkable ability to find the best interpretation of terrible things. Or maybe I just see you clearly. If you saw me clearly, you'd run. Elena shifted closer, her free hand coming to rest against his cheek. I see someone who saved my life when he had no reason to. Someone who takes care of rescue animals and reads Russian poetry and makes sure I eat. Someone who's trying very hard to push me away because he thinks he's protecting me. She leaned in, her forehead against his. I see you, Adrian, all of you, and I'm staying. His arm came around her waist, pulling her into his lap with a desperation that made her chest ache. They sat like that, wrapped around each other, while the afternoon light slanted through the windows and the world outside continued without them. I'm going to fail you, Adrian whispered against her hair. Someday, I'm going to fail to keep you safe. Then we'll deal with it when it happens. You're so certain. No, I'm terrified, but I'm more terrified of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what we could have been. Adrian pulled back enough to look at her, and Elena saw the walls he'd built around himself cracking, saw the man underneath the careful control, the one who was just as broken as she was, just in different ways. I love you, he said. Simple, direct, no qualification. Elena's breath caught. That's a dangerous thing to say. Everything about this is dangerous. Yeah. She kissed him softly. I love you too. The admission felt like jumping off a cliff, terrifying and exhilarating and somehow exactly right. They made love on her couch as the afternoon faded to evening, slow and almost desperate, like they were trying to prove something to themselves, that this was real, that they weren't imagining it, that despite everything working against them, they'd found something worth keeping. After, Adrian held her against his chest and said, There's going to be a dinner. A dinner? In 2 weeks. People I do business with. They'll want to meet you. Why? Because you're important to me. Because that makes you important to them. Because in my world, everything is about relationships and leverage, and you're now part of that equation. Elena processed this. What do I need to know? Don't ask about business. Don't offer opinions on anything substantive. Smile, be polite, and let me handle everything else. That sounds condescending. It's protective. These people... Adrian stopped, his arm tightening around her. These people are dangerous. Not in the way I'm dangerous, which is controlled and specific. Dangerous in the way that values nothing and would hurt you just to see if I'd react. And you think bringing me into that environment is a good idea? No, I think it's a terrible idea, but not bringing you would be worse. It would signal that you're a weakness I'm trying to hide rather than a strength I'm confident in. That's twisted. Yes. Welcome to my world. Elena turned in his arms to face him. I'll do it. But Adrian, if it gets too much, if I need to leave, I'm leaving. Agreed. I'll have someone positioned to take you out if necessary. You're serious? Completely. She studied his face, saw the absolute sincerity there. This was his life. This strange, dangerous world of power plays and hidden threats and relationships built on leverage rather than trust. Okay, she said. 2 weeks. I'll be ready. You're remarkable. You know that? I'm insane. There's a difference. Adrian smiled, that real smile that transformed his whole face, and kissed her again. Then we're both insane. At least we're consistent. The 2 weeks passed too quickly. Elena divided her time between the animals and preparing for a dinner she didn't understand. Adrian bought her a dress, black, elegant, probably cost more than her first car. She protested. He ignored her. You need to look like you belong, he explained. These people judge everything. Your clothes, your posture, your word choice. Give them nothing to criticize. No pressure. You'll be fine. Just remember, you're there as my partner, not my employee. Don't defer to me unless it's about business. Don't apologize for existing. And for the love of everything, don't let anyone condescend to you. What if they try? Then smile and eviscerate them politely. You're a doctor. You're smarter than most of the people in that room. Act like it. The night of the dinner, Elena stood in front of the mirror in the cottage and barely recognized herself. The dress fit perfectly, skimming her body in ways that were elegant rather than provocative. Her hair was up, her makeup subtle but polished. She looked like someone who belonged in Adrian's world. She felt like an imposter. Adrian arrived precisely on time, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than her monthly salary used to be. He stopped in the doorway, his eyes traveling over her with an intensity that made her skin warm. You look... He stopped, seemed to search for words. You look perfect. I look expensive. That too. He moved closer, his hand coming to rest at the small of her back. Are you ready? No? Good. Fear keeps you sharp. He guided her toward the door. Remember everything I told you. And Elena, no matter what happens, no matter what you see or hear, trust that I'm handling it. That should have been reassuring. Instead, it made her stomach twist with anxiety. The dinner was at the main house, but in a part Elena had never seen. A formal dining room that looked like it belonged in a European palace. The table was set for 12, crystal and china gleaming under chandelier light. People were already arriving. Elena recognized none of them, but they all seemed to recognize Adrian. They greeted him in various languages, Russian, French, something she thought might be Mandarin, and then their eyes would slide to her assessing, calculating. Adrian kept her close, his hand never leaving the small of her back. He introduced her simply, Elena, my partner. Not my girlfriend, not my veterinarian. Partner. A word that meant something in this room, something about power and position that Elena didn't fully understand. The dinner itself was a test disguised as a meal. Conversation flowed in multiple languages, topics shifting from business to politics to art, with dizzying speed. Elena stayed quiet mostly, listening, learning. One man, older, Russian, with eyes like chips of ice, spoke to her directly. You are doctor, yes? For animals? I'm a veterinarian, Elena confirmed. This is interesting work? It has its moments. And you enjoy living so far from city? Is very quiet here. Elena heard the unspoken question. Why are you really here? What do you want from Adrian? I like the quiet, she said evenly. The city was killing me. The man's eyebrows rose fractionally. Strong words. Honest ones. Something that might have been respect flickered in his eyes. I see why Adrian likes you. You do not pretend. No, I don't. Adrian's hand tightened slightly on her back. Approval or warning, she couldn't tell. The dinner continued. Elena navigated conversations about things she didn't understand, smiled at jokes that weren't funny, and watched Adrian operate in his element. He was different here, harder, more calculating. The man who read poetry and worried about her eating was buried under layers of control and power. It should have scared her. Instead, she found it fascinating. Halfway through the meal, a woman across the table, young, beautiful, dripping with diamonds, looked at Elena and smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "You must tell us," the woman said in accented English, "how you met our Adrian. Such a romantic story, I am sure." Every eye turned to Elena. This was a test too. She could feel it. "He found me dying in a parking lot and saved my life," Elena said calmly. "Then he offered me a job when I needed one. Not particularly romantic, but effective." The woman's smile tightened. "How practical." "Yes, we're very practical people." "I see." The conversation moved on, but Elena felt the shift. She'd passed something, proven something. Adrian's hand moved from her back to her hand under the table, squeezing gently. When the dinner finally ended, Elena felt like she'd run a marathon. Adrian walked her back to the cottage, silent until they were inside with the door closed. "You did well," he said. "I felt like I was in a minefield." "You were, but you didn't step on anything." Elena kicked off her shoes, collapsed on the couch. "Who were those people? Business associates? Some partners? Some competitors who I'm trying to keep from becoming enemies?" "The woman with the diamonds hated me." "Katerina hates everyone. Don't take it personally." "She wanted me to fail." "Yes, but you didn't." Adrian sat beside her, pulling her against his side. "You were perfect." "I was terrified." "That's what made you perfect. You were scared, but you didn't show it. That's strength." Elena closed her eyes, let herself sink into his warmth. "Is it always like that?" "Usually worse. That's not comforting. It's honest." They sat in silence for a while before Elena said, "I need to tell you something." She felt Adrian tense. "What?" "I'm late." "Late for what?" "My period. I'm late." The silence that followed was absolute. Elena felt Adrian go very still beside her. "How late?" His voice was carefully controlled. "A week. Maybe more. I haven't been tracking it closely." "Do you think—" "I don't know. Maybe. We haven't been exactly careful." Adrian pulled away, stood, ran his hands through his hair. "Elena, I'm not asking you for anything. I just thought you should know." "Not asking for anything?" He turned to face her. "If you're pregnant, if we're pregnant, that changes everything." "Does it?" "Yes. Everything. My world, the people I deal with, the danger." He stopped, his expression shifting to something like panic. "A child would be a target, the ultimate leverage against me." Elena stood too, moved to him. "Adrian, I don't know if I'm pregnant. I'm just late. It could be stress. It could be my body still adjusting after months of abusing it. Let's not panic until we know. We need to know." "Okay. I'll take a test tomorrow." "Tonight." "Adrian, please." His hands came up to frame her face. "I need to know. I need to know what we're facing." Elena saw real fear in his eyes, and her own anxiety ratcheted up to match. "Okay. Tonight." He had a pregnancy test in his possession within 30 minutes. Elena didn't ask where it came from or how he'd obtained it so quickly. She just took it and went into the bathroom while Adrian paced her living room like a caged animal. 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. When the timer went off, Elena looked at the test. 2 lines. Positive. She stood there staring at it, trying to process what it meant. She was 27, diabetic, working for a criminal, in love with a dangerous man, and now pregnant. This was not the life she'd planned. This was not the life anyone would plan. She opened the bathroom door. Adrian stopped pacing, turned to face her. She didn't need to say anything. He saw it in her expression. "You're sure?" he said. 2 lines, clear as day. Adrian sat down hard on her couch, his head in his hands. Elena moved to him, sat beside him, waited. "We can't keep it," he said finally. "Not in my world, not with the danger. It's not safe. That's my decision, not yours." "Elena, my body, my choice. I'm just telling you what the situation is." Adrian looked at her and she saw something break in his expression. "You want to keep it?" I don't know what I want. I need time to think. But Adrian, you don't get to make this decision for me. I would never. He stopped. You're right. I'm sorry. This is your choice. But if you decide to go through with it, you need to understand what it means. What we'll be facing. Then tell me, honestly. Adrian took her hands, held them tightly. It means you become the most vulnerable part of my life. It means people will try to use you and the baby against me. It means security, always. It means raising a child in a world of violence and secrets. It means, his voice cracked. It means I could lose you both. Or it means we build something good in spite of the darkness, maybe even because of it. That's optimism. That's hope. Adrian pulled her close, held her like she might disappear. I can't lose you, he whispered. I've only just found you. I can't. You won't. We'll figure this out, together. They sat like that while the night deepened around them, holding each other against all the uncertainty, and Elena thought about the strange path that had brought her here. From dying in a parking lot to living on an estate with a man she loved, and a baby growing inside her that neither of them had planned. It was insane. It was dangerous. It was probably going to be a disaster, but it was hers, theirs, and she'd never felt more alive. The first doctor's appointment was scheduled for 3 days later. Adrian insisted on a private physician who made house calls, someone discreet who wouldn't ask questions about the armed security that had suddenly appeared around the property. Elena didn't argue. She was too busy trying to keep food down. The morning sickness hit her like a freight train. Adrian found her on the bathroom floor of the cottage at 6 a.m., shaking and pale, and his face went white. Hospital, he said, already reaching for his phone. It's normal. Elena wiped her mouth with a shaky hand. This is what happens. You're diabetic. Nothing about this is normal. The diabetes makes it complicated, not impossible. I just need... She stopped as another wave of nausea hit. When it passed, she finished weakly. I need crackers and ginger ale. Adrian disappeared and returned within minutes with both, plus a cold washcloth that he pressed to the back of her neck with surprising gentleness. He sat on the bathroom floor beside her while she nibbled crackers and tried to convince her stomach to settle. This is going to be the whole first trimester, she said. Maybe longer. Then I'm moving you to the main house. No. Elena, I like my cottage. I'm not giving it up because of morning sickness. You can't take care of yourself if you're spending half the morning on the bathroom floor. I've been taking care of myself for 27 years. I think I can manage. Adrian's jaw tightened. That was before. This is different. Because I'm pregnant? Because you're carrying something precious, and I can't lose either of you. The raw honesty in his voice stopped her protest. Elena looked at him, this dangerous man sitting on her bathroom floor with a washcloth in one hand and terror barely contained in his eyes, and felt something shift in her chest. Okay, she said quietly, but I'm keeping the cottage too, for when I need space. Deal. She moved into the main house that afternoon. Adrian gave her a suite of rooms that was bigger than her entire apartment had been. Bedroom, sitting room, bathroom, with a tub that could fit 3 people. The closet was already stocked with clothes in her size, maternity, and otherwise. When did you do this? She asked, running her hand over soft fabric. This morning, while you were sleeping. You had time to order an entire wardrobe while I was sleeping for 3 hours? I'm efficient. Elena turned to face him. You're terrifying. Yes. No apology, just acknowledgement. Is that a problem? She thought about it. About the speed with which he operated, the resources he commanded, the absolute certainty with which he moved through the world. A month ago, it would have been a problem. Now it just felt like Adrian. No, she said. It's not a problem. The doctor arrived exactly on time, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Dr. Sarah Chen examined Elena thoroughly, asked detailed questions about her diabetes management, and took enough blood to stock a small lab. Your A1C is better than I expected, Dr. Chen said, reviewing the results on a tablet. Still not ideal for pregnancy, but workable. We'll need to monitor you closely. Weekly appointments minimum, more if there are any complications. What kind of complications? Adrian asked from his position by the window. He'd stayed for the entire appointment, silent but watchful. With type 1 diabetes, there's increased risk of preeclampsia, premature birth, birth defects if glucose isn't well controlled. The baby may be larger than average, which can cause delivery complications. And Elena's body is going to be under significant stress. So this is dangerous, Adrian said flatly. All pregnancies carry risk. This one carries more than average. But with proper management, most women with diabetes have healthy pregnancies and healthy babies. Doctor, Chen looked at Elena. You need to be diligent about monitoring your glucose. Multiple times a day. Any reading outside normal range, I want to know about it immediately. I can do that. You also need to eat regularly, even when you're nauseous. Your body is working overtime right now. Starving it isn't an option. Elena thought about the crackers that kept coming back up. I'm trying. Try harder. Dr. Chen's tone was gentle but firm. And Mr. Voss, she's going to need support. Real support, not just hovering. I don't hover, Adrian said. Both women looked at him. He was standing like a sentinel by the window, his attention fixed on Elena with an intensity that was almost physical. Right, Dr. Chen said dryly. Not hovering. My mistake. After the doctor left, Elena found Adrian in his office, staring at his computer screen without really seeing it. She knocked on the door frame. I'm not fragile, she said. I know. Then stop looking at me like I might shatter. Adrian turned to face her. The doctor said this is dangerous. The doctor said it carries risk. Everything carries risk. Not like this. Elena moved into the room, sat in the chair across from his desk. Talk to me. Really talk to me. What are you afraid of? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. I had a sister, younger. She died when I was 19. Elena's breath caught. Adrian, she was pregnant, 16 pregnant, terrified. Our mother threw her out, said she'd brought shame on the family. His hands clenched on the desk. She came to me. I was barely surviving myself, but I tried to help. Found her a place to stay, a doctor. But she was too scared to go to appointments, too scared to tell anyone when something went wrong. What happened? Preeclampsia. She had a seizure. By the time I found her, it was too late. We lost her and the baby both. The pain in his voice was old but not healed. Elena stood, moved around the desk, and pulled him to his feet. His arms came around her immediately, holding tight. I'm not your sister, she said quietly. I'm going to my appointments. I'm monitoring my glucose. I'm doing everything right. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise I'll try. And I can promise I won't hide if something's wrong. Adrian pulled back enough to look at her. You're the most stubborn person I've ever met. You're the most controlling. We're quite a pair. Yeah. Elena smiled despite everything. We really are. The weeks crawled by. Elena's body changed in ways that were both fascinating and uncomfortable. The morning sickness eased around week 10, replaced by constant hunger and an exhaustion that made her old double shifts feel easy. Her glucose levels were all over the place despite her best efforts, swinging high and low with a randomness that terrified her. Adrian hovered. He tried not to, but he did anyway. He appeared at mealtimes with food she hadn't asked for. He checked her glucose monitor more often than she did. He installed a medical alert system in her rooms that would notify him and Dr. Chen if her levels dropped dangerously. This is excessive, Elena said, examining the small device on her wrist. It's necessary. It's paranoid. Yes. Adrian didn't look up from his laptop. Your point? Elena threw a pillow at him. He caught it without looking, the corner of his mouth twitching. You're impossible, she said. You've mentioned that before. I'll keep mentioning it until you believe me. He set aside the laptop and pulled her onto his lap, his hand coming to rest on the small swell of her stomach that was just beginning to show. I'll stop hovering when you stop being the most important thing in my world. So never. Probably never. She kissed him, soft and slow, and felt some of his tension ease. They were learning to navigate this, the fear and the hope, the danger and the domesticity. It wasn't smooth, it wasn't easy, but it was theirs. The security increased as Elena's pregnancy became more obvious. Men appeared who didn't introduce themselves, who stood at careful distances and watched everything. Adrian explained it as a precaution. Elena knew better. Something had changed. Something had made him more afraid. She found out what during a conversation she wasn't supposed to hear. It was week 14. Elena had come down to the kitchen late at night, craving ice cream with a desperation that defied logic. She heard voices in Adrian's office, his and another man's, speaking Russian. She should have announced herself, should have walked away. Instead, she stopped in the hallway and listened. Her Russian was minimal, picked up from being around Adrian and his associates, but she caught enough words to piece together the conversation. Someone had been asking questions about her, about the pregnancy, about when she'd be most vulnerable. Adrian's voice when he responded was colder than she'd ever heard it. He was giving orders, each word clipped and precise. She heard a name, Victor, and the word for deal, or maybe negotiation. Then something that sounded like threat. The other man said something sharp. Adrian's response was a single word that needed no translation. No. Elena backed away quietly, returned to her room without the ice cream. She sat on the bed and tried to process what she'd heard. Someone was targeting her. Someone saw her pregnancy as an opportunity. Adrian found her 20 minutes later, still sitting in the dark. "You heard," he said. Not a question. "Some of it." He moved to the bed, sat beside her. "Viktor Petrov, he's been a problem for a while. He thinks your pregnancy makes you weak, makes me weak." "Does it?" "Yes, but not in the way he thinks." Elena turned to face him. "What's he planning?" "Nothing, if I handle it correctly. Everything, if I don't." "That's not an answer." Adrian's hand found hers in the darkness. "He wants leverage against me. He thinks taking you would give him control over my operations. He's wrong, but the attempt would still hurt you." "So what do we do?" "We? Nothing. You stay safe. I handle Victor." "Handle how?" Adrian was quiet for a moment. "However necessary." Elena heard what he wasn't saying. Whatever Adrian was planning, it wasn't going to be pretty. It probably wasn't going to be legal, and it definitely wasn't going to be safe. "I don't want you to kill anyone for me," she said quietly. "I won't kill anyone for you, but I will kill anyone who tries to hurt you. There's a difference." "That's a fine line." "It's the only line that matters." They sat in silence, hands linked, while Elena tried to reconcile the man who read poetry and worried about her eating with the man who could discuss murder with such calm certainty. She should have been horrified. Maybe she was. But she was also pragmatic enough to know that Adrian's world didn't allow for clean solutions. "When?" she asked. "Soon. Before you're too far along to travel if we need to relocate." "We might have to leave?" "It's a possibility. I have other properties. Safer locations." Elena thought about the cottage, the leopards, the life she'd built here in just a few months. "I don't want to leave." "I don't want you to have to, but your safety comes first." "The baby's safety." "Both." Adrian's hand moved to her stomach. "Always both." 3 days later, Adrian left before dawn. Elena woke to find a note on his pillow. "Stay in the house. Security knows you're not to leave for any reason. I'll be back by tonight." She tried calling him. The call went straight to voicemail. She tried texting. No response. The day passed with agonizing slowness. Elena worked in the estate's small library, reorganizing medical journals to keep her hands busy and her mind occupied. The security team was more visible than usual, men stationed at every entrance and exit. She saw them through the windows, moving in patterns that suggested military training. Dr. Chen arrived for a scheduled checkup around 3. Everything looked good. Baby's heartbeat strong, Elena's glucose acceptable. No signs of complications. But Elena couldn't focus on the good news. Her mind was wherever Adrian was, doing whatever he was doing to eliminate the threat Viktor Petrov posed. "You're stressed," Dr. Chen observed, putting away her equipment. "I'm worried." "About the baby?" "About everything." Dr. Chen gave her a long look. "You know what you've gotten yourself into?" "I'm starting to." "And you're staying anyway?" "I'm staying anyway." The doctor shook her head. "I've been doing this for 30 years. I've seen a lot of unconventional situations. This might be the most unconventional." "Is that a professional opinion?" "That's a human one." Dr. Chen packed her bag. "But for what it's worth, I've also never seen a man more committed to keeping someone safe. Whatever he's doing today, it's because he believes it's necessary. That's what worries me. Fair enough. Adrian returned just after sunset. Elena heard the car, heard voices in the entryway, heard footsteps approaching. She was in the library still, pretending to read, when he appeared in the doorway. He looked exhausted. Not physically injured, no visible wounds, no blood, but drained in a way that went deeper than tiredness. His suit jacket was gone. His shirt sleeves were rolled up. There was a tension in his shoulders that spoke of violence recently committed. "Is it done?" Elena asked. "It's done." "Victor?" "Won't be a problem anymore." Elena set down her book. "Did you kill him?" Adrian moved into the room, poured himself a drink from the bar cart with hands that were completely steady. "No, but I made it very clear what would happen if he continued to be a problem. He's leaving the country. Permanently." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." He drank half the glass in one swallow. "He's terrified enough that he'll stay gone." "How did you make him terrified?" Adrian looked at her over the rim of his glass. "You don't want to know." He was probably right, but Elena found herself asking anyway. "Tell me." Adrian set down his glass and moved to the couch, sitting heavily. Elena joined him, tucking herself against his side. His arm came around her automatically. "I took something he values," Adrian said quietly. "Several things, actually. Money, property, connections. Made it clear that if he ever even thinks about you or the baby again, I'll take everything else, including his life. That's not just a threat. No, it's a promise." Elena absorbed this. Adrian had spent the day systematically destroying a man's life as a warning. It should have repulsed her. Instead, she felt a complicated mix of gratitude and guilt. "I don't know how to feel about this," she admitted. "Feel however you need to feel, but know that I'd do it again. I'll do worse if necessary." "I know." They sat in silence for a while before Adrian said, "There's something else." Elena's stomach tightened. "What?" Victor wasn't working alone. He was being backed by someone else, someone with resources I don't have easy access to. "Who?" "I don't know yet, but I will." His hand moved to her stomach, protective and possessive. "Someone wants you vulnerable, wants our baby vulnerable, and they're using people like Victor to test my defenses. So this isn't over." "No, this is just the beginning." Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of it settle over her. She was 4 months pregnant, diabetic, in love with a criminal, and apparently targeted by unknown enemies who saw her as a weakness to exploit. "Maybe I should leave," she said quietly. "Go somewhere safe. Somewhere they can't find me." Adrian's arm tightened around her. "No, Adrian. Separating us makes you more vulnerable, not less. Here, I can protect you. Here, you have security and resources, and me. Out there alone, you're an easy target. So I'm trapped. You're safe. There's a difference." Elena wanted to argue, wanted to assert some kind of independence, some proof that she wasn't just a possession to be protected. But the truth was, she was tired. Tired of being afraid, tired of being strong, tired of pretending she could handle all of this alone. "Okay," she said, "we stay. We figure this out, together." "Together," Adrian agreed. The pregnancy progressed. Elena's body continued to change, expanding in ways that fascinated and occasionally embarrassed her. The baby kicked for the first time at 18 weeks, a flutter that made her gasp. Adrian felt it a week later, his hand pressed to her stomach while they lay in bed, and his expression transformed into something like wonder. "That's real," he said quietly. "Did you think it wasn't?" "I knew it intellectually, but feeling it—" He trailed off, his hand moving gently over her skin. "That's our daughter in there." "Or son." "Daughter, I can feel it." Elena laughed. "That's not how biology works." "Nevertheless." "Daughter." He was right. They found out at the 20-week ultrasound, a girl, healthy, measuring right on target despite Elena's diabetes. Dr. Chen seemed pleasantly surprised by how well everything was going. "Your glucose control has been excellent," she said, reviewing the data. "Better than many non-diabetic mothers I've seen. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." What Elena was doing was letting Adrian manage half her life. He tracked her meals, reminded her to check her levels, adjusted her insulin doses in consultation with Dr. Chen. It should have felt suffocating. Instead, it felt like partnership, like she wasn't carrying this alone. "We need to talk about names," Adrian said one evening. They were in the library, Elena with her feet propped on his lap while he read through reports on a tablet. "Already?" "She'll be here in 4 months. That's not much time." Elena considered. She hadn't let herself think too much about the future, about what came after the pregnancy. It felt like tempting fate. "What names do you like?" she asked. "Russian names feel wrong. She'll be American. She should have an American name. But she'll also be yours. She should have something that connects to who you are." Adrian set down the tablet, his hand moving absently over her ankle. "My mother was a Katerina. Catherine in English." "Was. She died years ago." His voice was carefully neutral. "We weren't close, but the name is a good one." Elena heard the pain underneath the neutrality. "Catherine. Katie for short?" "Maybe." He looked at her. "What about you? Family names?" "My mother was Sarah. My grandmother was Elizabeth. Catherine Elizabeth. Kate for short." Elena tested the name silently. It felt right. Strong, but not harsh. Classic without being old-fashioned. "Kate," she said. "I like it." "Kate it is, then." They smiled at each other, and for a moment it felt almost normal, like they were just two people expecting a baby, planning a future, building something good. Then Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression hardened. "What?" Elena asked. "Nothing urgent. Business." "Adrian?" He sighed, set down the phone. "One of my operations was raided this morning. No one was arrested, but equipment was seized." "By police?" "Federal agents, which means someone with significant resources is paying attention to me." "Is this about Victor? About whoever was backing him?" "Probably. They're probing, testing my responses, trying to find weaknesses." Elena pulled her feet from his lap, sat up. "And I'm the weakness." "You're not weak. You're valuable. There's a difference." That's semantics. It's truth." Adrian moved closer, his hand coming to rest on her very pregnant stomach. "You and Kate are the most important things in my life. That makes you valuable to me and dangerous to my enemies. But it doesn't make you weak." "I feel weak. I can't even tie my own shoes anymore." Adrian smiled despite the tension. "I'll tie your shoes, I'll do anything you need, but don't confuse temporary physical limitations with actual weakness. You're the strongest person I know." "I'm scared." "So am I." The admission surprised her. Adrian rarely acknowledged fear, rarely showed anything but complete control. "Of what?" she asked. "Of failing you. Of not being good enough to keep you both safe. Of losing everything I've found with you." His voice dropped. "Of becoming my father." "What was your father like?" Adrian was quiet for so long that Elena thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was distant, violent, unpredictable. "He loved my mother, I think, in his way. But his love looked like control and possession, and rage when things didn't go how he wanted. He hurt her, regularly, and when she finally left, he killed her." Elena's breath caught. "Adrian, I was 17. I came home and found her. He was already gone, fled back to Russia where extradition couldn't touch him. My sister and I were alone." His hand tightened on her stomach. "I swore I'd never be like him, never let violence touch the people I loved. And now here I am, bringing you into a world full of exactly that. You're not your father." "How do you know?" "Because your father's violence came from anger and control. Yours comes from protection. There's a difference." "Is there?" Elena took his face in her hands, made him look at her. "Yes. Your father hurt people because he wanted power over them. You hurt people who threaten the ones you love. That's not the same thing. It's still violence." "Yes. But it's violence with purpose. Violence with limits. You're not trying to control me, Adrian. You're trying to keep me safe." "What if I can't tell the difference anymore?" "Then I'll tell you. That's what I'm here for." Adrian pulled her close, careful of her stomach, and buried his face in her hair. They stayed like that while the evening darkened around them, holding each other against all the fear and uncertainty. The federal investigation intensified. Adrian's operations were hit repeatedly, not hard enough to cripple him, but enough to be annoying, enough to be a message. He spent more time away from the estate, handling things Elena didn't ask about. The security around her doubled, then tripled. At 30 weeks, Dr. Chen put her on modified bed rest. Elena's blood pressure had started creeping up, not dangerously yet, but enough to be concerning. Elena protested. Dr. Chen was unmoved. "Your body is under tremendous stress," the doctor said firmly. "The diabetes, the pregnancy, the—" She glanced at the armed man visible through the window. "Lifestyle factors. You need to rest, really rest, not just sit around worrying." "I don't just sit around worrying. You pace, I've seen you. You check your phone every 5 minutes waiting for updates from Adrian. You barely sleep." Dr. Chen's voice softened. "Elena, I know this is hard, but you need to focus on keeping this baby inside you for at least 8 more weeks, preferably 10. That means rest. Real rest." So Elena rested, or tried to. She sat up in the library with books and her laptop and tried not to think about what Adrian was doing. He came home every night, sometimes late, always looking more tired than when he'd left. He'd find her in the library and they'd talk about nothing important, about everything important, about the baby who was running out of room and making her ribs ache. "She's going to be tall," Adrian said one night, his hand tracing the curve of Elena's stomach. "Like her mother." "I'm not tall. I'm average." "You're perfect." "That's bias." "That's truth." He leaned down, pressed a kiss to her stomach. "Kate, your mother is perfect. Don't let her tell you otherwise." Elena felt her eyes sting with unexpected tears. Pregnancy had made her emotional in ways she hated, crying at commercials and random acts of kindness. But this felt different. This felt like the future trying to break through all the fear. "Are we going to be okay?" she asked quietly. Adrian looked up at her. "Yes." "You don't know that." "I know that I will do whatever it takes to make sure we're okay. I know that I've never wanted anything as much as I want this, you, Kate, a future. I know that anyone who tries to take that from me will regret it." His hand pressed gently against her stomach. "So yes, Elena, we're going to be okay." She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust in his certainty, his strength, his absolute conviction that he could protect them against anything. But she'd been a veterinarian long enough to know that wanting something didn't make it true. That sometimes, despite everyone's best efforts, things went wrong. "What if they don't stop?" she asked. "Whoever's targeting us, what if they keep coming? Then I'll keep stopping them. Forever? If necessary." Elena closed her eyes. "That's not a life. Not for Kate. Not for any of us. It's the life we have." "Then maybe we need to change it." Adrian went very still. "What are you suggesting?" "I don't know. Leave, disappear, build something new somewhere they can't find us? They'll always find us. Running just makes us easier targets. So we fight forever. We fight as long as necessary." Elena heard the finality in his tone. This was Adrian's world. Had been long before she'd entered it. He knew the rules, knew the players, knew what worked and what didn't. And he was telling her that running wasn't an option. She should have been angry, should have demanded better, safer, more. Instead, she just felt tired. "Okay," she said quietly. "We stay. We fight. We protect Kate." "We protect Kate," Adrian agreed. 2 weeks later, at 32 weeks pregnant, Elena's water broke. She was in the library reading a book about newborn care that was simultaneously helpful and terrifying. Adrian was gone. Another meeting, another crisis, another piece of his empire that needed his attention. She'd been feeling off all day, vaguely uncomfortable in a way she couldn't quite define. Then there was a rush of fluid and sudden, sharp pain that made her gasp. "No," she said out loud to the empty room. "No, not yet. It's too early." But her body didn't care about timing. Another contraction hit, stronger than the first, and Elena fumbled for her phone. She called Adrian first. He answered on the first ring. "I need you," she said, trying to keep the panic out of her voice. "My water broke. I'm in labor." "I'm 40 minutes away. I'm coming." "Elena, breathe. Call Dr. Chen. The security team knows what to do." "Adrian, I'm coming, I promise. Just breathe. He hung up. Elena called Dr. Chen next, who answered with professional calm and promised to meet her at the hospital. Then she called for security. Two men appeared within seconds, Marcus and someone whose name she'd never learned. They took one look at her and sprang into action with military efficiency. Within minutes, she was in a car, speeding toward the hospital with Marcus driving like they were being chased. The contractions were coming faster now, harder, each one stealing her breath. Too fast for 32 weeks. Too fast for a first baby. Something was wrong. They made it to the hospital in 20 minutes. Dr. Chen was already there, meeting them at the emergency entrance with a wheelchair and a team. Elena was whisked into a labor and delivery room, hooked up to monitors that started beeping in ways that made the nurses' faces tighten. "The baby's in distress," Dr. Chen said, her voice calm but urgent. "We need to get her out, now." "Where's Adrian?" Elena asked through the pain. "He's coming, but we can't wait. Elena, I need you to focus. We're taking you to surgery." "No, I can't. I need—" Another contraction hit, worse than the others, and Elena screamed. The monitors started screaming too, alarms filling the air. "Now," Dr. Chen ordered. "We're losing her heartbeat." Everything happened in a blur. Elena was moving, being wheeled rapidly through hallways while people shouted medical terms she understood too well. Fetal distress, placental abruption, emergency C-section. Her baby was dying, and there was nothing she could do but let them cut her open and pray. She was in the operating room when Adrian arrived. She heard him before she saw him, his voice sharp with barely controlled panic, demanding to know where she was. Then he was there, scrubbed and gowned, his hand finding hers. "I'm here," he said. "I'm here. You're going to be fine. Kate's going to be fine." "She's too early," Elena whispered. 8 weeks too early. She's not ready." "She's your daughter. She's a fighter." The anesthesia was taking effect, numbing her from the chest down. Elena felt pressure but no pain as Dr. Chen worked with swift efficiency. Adrian never let go of her hand, never took his eyes off her face. "Almost there," Dr. Chen said. "I can see her. She's—" A sound filled the room. Not the healthy cry Elena had read about in all those baby books. A weak, mewling sound that made her heart stop. "Is she okay?" Elena asked. "Why isn't she crying?" "She's breathing," Dr. Chen said. "That's what matters. The NICU team is taking her now." Elena tried to catch a glimpse of her daughter, but there were too many people, too much movement. She heard urgent voices, heard the sound of equipment, heard that weak cry fade to nothing. "Adrian," she said, fear making her voice shake. "Go with her. Make sure she's okay." "I'm not leaving you. I'll be fine. Kate needs you, please." Adrian looked torn, his eyes moving between Elena and the doorway where their daughter had disappeared. Elena squeezed his hand. "Go," she said. "I'll still be here when you're done. She needs you now." He kissed her forehead hard and fast, then was gone. Elena lay on the operating table while Dr. Chen finished the surgery, stitching her back together while her daughter fought for her life somewhere else in the hospital. She'd never felt more helpless, more useless, more terrified. "She's strong," Dr. Chen said quietly, working steadily. "Born at 32 weeks, breathing on her own. Those are good signs. But she's very small. Her lungs aren't fully developed. The next 72 hours are critical." Elena closed her eyes and tried not to think about all the things that could go wrong. Tried not to remember her veterinary training, all the ways premature babies struggled and failed. Tried not to imagine a future without the daughter she'd carried for 8 months. Adrian returned an hour later. Elena was in recovery, still numb from the waist down, when he appeared beside her bed. "She's alive," he said immediately. "In the NICU. 3 pounds, 4 ounces. Breathing with support. Fighting. Can I see her?" "Soon. They're stabilizing her, getting her settled." He took her hand, brought it to his lips. "She has your eyes. Even though they're barely open, I can tell. She has your eyes and your stubbornness." "Is she going to make it?" Adrian's grip tightened. "Yes, she has to. I won't accept any other outcome." That wasn't how biology worked. That wasn't how anything worked. But Elena didn't have the strength to argue. She just held his hand and tried to believe in his certainty. They brought her to see Kate 6 hours later, wheeling Elena's bed into the NICU. Her daughter was in an isolette, impossibly tiny, covered in wires and tubes, but she was alive. Her chest rose and fell with mechanical precision, helped by a ventilator. Her hands were smaller than Elena's thumb. "She's perfect," Adrian said quietly. "She's so small. She'll grow. She'll fight. She's ours." Elena reached through the isolette's openings, let her finger touch Kate's tiny hand. The baby's fingers curled around hers instinctively, that primitive reflex that made Elena's heart crack open. "Hi, baby," she whispered. "I'm your mom. I'm sorry you had to come so early. I'm sorry I couldn't keep you safe longer, but you're here now and we're not going anywhere." Kate's monitors beeped steadily. Adrian's hand found Elena's shoulder, solid and warm. They stood there together, watching their daughter breathe, and Elena thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a rain-soaked parking lot to a NICU room. From dying alone to fighting for a life they'd created together. It wasn't the story she would have written. It wasn't safe or simple or anywhere close to normal. But it was theirs. And for now, watching Kate's tiny chest rise and fall, that was enough. The first 72 hours were hell. Elena was discharged from her hospital room after 3 days, but she refused to leave the building. Adrian had a private room arranged on the same floor as the NICU, a space that technically wasn't supposed to exist but appeared anyway because Adrian had made it happen. Elena moved in with a bag of clothes he'd brought from home and no intention of going anywhere until Kate came with her. Kate's condition fluctuated. 1 hour the monitors would show improvement, the next they'd alarm with drops in oxygen saturation or heart rate irregularities. The NICU staff were professionals, calm and competent, but Elena could read the concern in their faces when they thought she wasn't looking. Adrian barely left either. He'd disappear for an hour here and there to handle critical business, always with his phone in hand, always returning faster than seemed possible. Elena would find him standing beside Kate's isolette at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 5 in the morning, his hand resting against the plastic as if he could will his strength into their daughter through sheer force of conviction. "You need to sleep," Elena told him on the 4th night. She'd woken to find him gone from the chair beside her bed and known exactly where he'd be. "She's awake," Adrian said without turning from the isolette. "Watch." Elena moved to his side, careful of her incision. Kate's eyes were open, barely, just slits, but open. They moved slightly, unfocused, searching for something they couldn't yet comprehend. "The nurse said it's normal," Adrian continued quietly. "Premature babies' sleep cycles are irregular, but I think she knows we're here." "Adrian, I know it's not scientific. I know she can't possibly recognize us yet, but look at her heart rate. It's steadier when we're close." Elena checked the monitor. He was right. When they stood near the isolette, Kate's vitals were marginally more stable. It could have been coincidence. It probably was coincidence. But Elena understood the need to believe otherwise. "Talk to her," Elena said. "She can hear your voice." Adrian hesitated, then leaned closer to the isolette. "Kate," he said softly, in Russian first, then English. "You're doing well. Your mother is here. I'm here. We're not going anywhere." Kate's tiny fingers flexed. The monitors stayed steady. "See?" Adrian looked at Elena with something like triumph. "She hears me." Elena slipped her hand into his, and they stood together watching their daughter breathe. The NICU around them hummed with machinery and quiet medical conversations. Somewhere, an alarm sounded and was quickly silenced. Another baby cried, the sound stronger than Kate's had been. "She's going to make it," Elena said, trying to convince herself as much as Adrian. "She has no choice. I won't allow any other outcome." "That's not how this works." "Then we'll make it work that way." It should have been arrogant, should have been ridiculous. Instead, it was just Adrian, refusing to accept defeat because acceptance wasn't in his vocabulary. On day 6, Kate was extubated. The ventilator came out, replaced by a nasal cannula that gave her oxygen but let her breathe on her own. Elena watched the procedure with her heart in her throat, terrified that Kate wouldn't be able to sustain it. But her daughter surprised everyone. She struggled for the first hour, her oxygen levels dipping and recovering, dipping and recovering. Then something clicked, and she stabilized. "That's my girl," Elena whispered, her hand pressed against the isolette. That's my fighter. Adrian appeared beside her with coffee he'd somehow acquired despite it being 3 in the morning. She's doing it. She's doing it. They watched their daughter breathe, really breathe, on her own, and Elena felt something loosen in her chest. Not relief, not yet, but the first fragile possibility that this might actually work. The doctors remained cautiously optimistic. Kate's weight was the next concern. She'd dropped to just under 3 pounds and needed to gain before she could come home. They started her on tiny amounts of Elena's expressed milk through a feeding tube, watching carefully for any sign of digestive distress. Elena spent hours pumping, producing milk her daughter couldn't yet drink properly but might need later. It felt both futile and essential, her body's way of contributing when she couldn't do anything else. Adrian handled the business he couldn't ignore from a corner of the NICU waiting room. His laptop balanced on his knees while he took calls in 3 different languages. Elena heard fragments, terse commands, negotiated terms, threats delivered with cold precision. His world hadn't stopped just because Kate had arrived early. If anything, it had intensified. "There's a problem," Adrian said one afternoon, pulling Elena aside into an empty consultation room. Her stomach dropped. "With Kate?" "No, with the investigation. The feds are making moves. They raided another of my properties this morning, this time with a warrant that specifically mentions you and Kate." Elena sat down heavily. "What does that mean?" "It means someone is trying to use our daughter as leverage. If they can prove she exists, prove you exist, they can pressure me through you." "Can they take her, put her in protective custody or something?" "Not without cause. And I haven't given them cause. But they're fishing, trying to find something they can use." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I won't let them use Kate as a weapon against us." "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done months ago. I'm going to eliminate the threat at its source." Elena heard the finality in his voice. "Adrian, you can't just—" "I can, and I will, but it means I'll be gone for a few days. Maybe a week." "No." Elena stood, ignoring the pull of her healing incision. "You're not leaving. Not while Kate is still in the NICU. Elena, she needs you. I need you. Whatever business you have to handle can wait. It can't wait. Every day I delay gives them more time to build a case, more opportunity to find you and Kate. I have to move now. Then move later, after she's stable, after she comes home." Adrian's hands framed her face, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "If I wait, there might not be a home to bring her to. These people don't play fair, Elena. They're coming for everything I've built, and they'll use our daughter to do it. I can't allow that." "So you're leaving us." "I'm protecting you. There's a difference." Elena pulled away from his touch. "It doesn't feel different. It feels like you're choosing your empire over your family." "I'm choosing to secure our future so we have the option of having a family. Do you think Kate will be safe if I'm in prison? Do you think you'll be safe if my organization collapses and every rival decides to make a move?" "I think we need you here. That's what I think." "You'll have security, Dr. Chen, everything you need. Except you." Adrian's expression cracked, showing the strain underneath. "I don't want to go, but I have to, and you know I'm right, even if you hate it." He was right. Elena did hate it. She hated that his world demanded this, hated that their daughter was barely a week old and already being used as leverage, hated that she couldn't even argue effectively because she understood the logic even while despising it. "How long?" she asked quietly. "A week, maybe less if things go well." "And if they don't go well?" "They will." "Adrian." "They will," he repeated, steel in his voice. "I'm not dying and leaving you alone with Kate. I'm not getting arrested and letting them use her as a pawn. I'm going to handle this, and then I'm coming back." Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust in his certainty the way she had when they'd first met, when his confidence had felt like safety instead of hubris. "Promise me," she said. "Promise you'll come back." "I promise." "Swear it, on Kate's life." Adrian pulled her close, careful of her still healing body. "On Kate's life. On yours. On everything that matters. I will come back." He left the next morning before dawn. Elena woke to find him gone, and a note on the pillow. "I love you. Watch over our daughter. I'll be home soon." The security team tripled. Elena couldn't move without seeing at least two armed men in her peripheral vision. They tried to be subtle, but subtle was difficult when you were 6'3" and carrying enough firepower to invade a small country. Kate continued to improve. Slowly, frustratingly slowly, but improve. Her weight crept up, her oxygen needs decreased. The feeding tube came out, replaced by careful bottle feeding that exhausted her within minutes, but proved she could do it. Elena spent every possible moment beside the isolette. She read to Kate from children's books Adrian had ordered. She talked about the cottage, about the leopards, about the life waiting for her when she was strong enough to come home. She tried not to think about Adrian, about what he was doing, about whether he was safe. He called once. Connection was bad, full of static and delay, but his voice came through clearly enough. "How is she?" he asked immediately. "Good. Better. She's up to 3 pounds 7 ounces. They think she might be ready to try breastfeeding in a few days." "And you?" "Tired. Worried about you." "Don't be. Everything is proceeding as planned." "That's not reassuring." "It's the truth." There was a pause filled with ambient noise Elena couldn't identify. "I have to go. I'll call again when I can." "Adrian, wait." But he'd already hung up. Elena stared at her phone, fighting the urge to call him back. He'd said not to, said that communication was dangerous while he was handling whatever situation required his personal attention. She understood the logic. That didn't make it easier. Dr. Chen found her in the NICU that afternoon, standing beside Kate's isolette with tears running down her face. "Hey," the doctor said gently. "What's wrong? Is Kate okay?" "She's fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine. Elena, I just miss him, okay? I miss Adrian and I'm scared something's going to happen to him, and Kate won't even remember her father." Dr. Chen pulled her into the consultation room, the same one where Adrian had told her he was leaving. "Talk to me. Really talk to me." So Elena did. She told Dr. Chen about the investigation, about the threats, about Adrian leaving to handle things that couldn't be handled any other way. She didn't mention specifics, didn't explain exactly what Adrian did or who he was dealing with, but she said enough. "You're in over your head," Dr. Chen said when she finished. "I know. And you're staying anyway." "I know that too." The doctor was quiet for a moment. "I can't tell you what to do with your life, but I can tell you that Kate needs stability. She needs a mother who's present, who's not constantly terrified. She needs a father who's alive and not in prison." "You think I should leave him?" "I think you should consider what's best for Kate. And maybe what's best is a life without constant danger." Elena had thought about it. Of course she'd thought about it, but every time she tried to imagine a life without Adrian, it felt wrong, incomplete, like cutting off a limb because it was injured instead of trying to heal it. "I can't," she said quietly. "I love him too much. Love isn't always enough. No, but it's all I have." Kate came off the nasal cannula on day 12. She was breathing room air, maintaining her oxygen saturation, growing stronger by increments. The nurses started talking about discharge timelines. Another week, maybe 2, and she could go home. Home. Elena tried to imagine it, taking Kate to the cottage, or maybe to the main house where there was more help, setting up a nursery, learning to be a mother without the safety net of medical professionals watching every breath. It terrified her. Adrian called again on day 14. This time the connection was clear. No static, no delay. "I'm coming home," he said without preamble. "Tomorrow." Relief flooded through Elena so strongly she had to sit down. "Is it done?" "It's handled. The investigation is being redirected. The people who are using it against us won't be a problem anymore." "What did you do?" "What was necessary. Elena, I need you to listen carefully. When I get back, there are going to be changes. I'm restructuring some operations, stepping back from others, making things more legitimate, more defensible." "Why?" "Because Kate deserves a father who comes home at night. Because you deserve a partner who isn't constantly looking over his shoulder. Because I'm tired of living like every day might be the last." Elena's throat tightened. "You're really doing this?" "I'm really doing this. It won't be complete overnight. Some things take time to unwind, but yes, I'm doing this." "What changed?" Adrian was quiet for a moment. "I held our daughter for 30 seconds before I had to leave. She was so small, Elena, so fragile, and I realized that if I don't change, she'll grow up without me, either because I'm dead, or because I'm in prison, or because you finally get smart and leave. I can't accept that. I'm not going to leave. You should. You'd be safer. We've had this argument. I won. Get over it. She heard him laugh, actually laugh, the sound rough but genuine. I'm never going to win an argument with you, am I? Probably not. I'm stubborn. That's an understatement. They talked for another few minutes before Adrian had to go, but the conversation left Elena feeling lighter than she had in days. He was coming home. He was making changes. Maybe, possibly, they could actually build something sustainable. Adrian arrived the next afternoon with shadows under his eyes and a cut on his jaw that hadn't been there when he left. Elena didn't ask about it. She just held him while he held her, both of them standing in the NICU hallway and remembering how to breathe together. "Show me our daughter," Adrian said finally. They walked into the NICU together. Kate was awake, her dark eyes, Elena's eyes, tracking the mobile someone had hung above her isolette. She'd grown in the 2 weeks Adrian had been gone, filled out enough that she looked less like a baby bird and more like an actual infant. "She's beautiful," Adrian said quietly. "She looks like you. She has your eyes, your nose. We made something perfect." Elena leaned against his side. "We made something worth protecting." Adrian's arm came around her shoulders, and they stood watching their daughter until the nurses kicked them out for shift change. That evening, in the private room Adrian had arranged, they talked about the future. Real plans, not vague hopes. Adrian explained the changes he was making, legitimizing some businesses, selling off others, creating distance between himself and the more questionable operations. It would take time. It would be expensive. But it was possible. "What about the people who won't like the changes?" Elena asked. "They'll adjust or they'll find new employment. I'm not asking permission." "That's going to create enemies." "I already have enemies. At least these will be predictable." Elena traced the cut on his jaw with gentle fingers. "What happened?" "A disagreement about asset distribution. It's been resolved." "Resolved how?" "The other party saw reason." "Did you hurt them?" Adrian caught her hand, held it against his face. "Do you really want to know?" She thought about it. "No, I don't think I do." "Good, because I'm trying to leave that part of my life behind, and reliving it doesn't help." They made love carefully that night, mindful of Elena's still healing incision. It was slow and tender and felt like a promise of better things ahead. After, lying in the dark with Adrian's heartbeat steady beneath her ear, Elena let herself hope. Kate was discharged 3 weeks after her birth. She weighed 4 pounds, 6 ounces. Still small but healthy. The pediatrician gave them careful instructions about feeding schedules and monitoring for any signs of distress. Elena absorbed it all while simultaneously terrified she'd forget everything the moment they left the hospital. Adrian had transformed one of the main house's guest suites into a nursery. Elena walked in and stopped, her breath catching. It was perfect. Soft colors, comfortable furniture, everything they could possibly need for a premature infant arranged with careful precision. "When did you do this, she asked. "While you were sleeping. I had help." "It's too much. It's not enough. But it's a start." They settled into a routine that was anything but routine. Kate needed to eat every 2 hours, around the clock. Elena's supply was still establishing, so they supplemented with formula while working with a lactation consultant. Adrian took the night feedings, insisting that Elena needed sleep to heal. Elena would wake to find him in the nursery's rocking chair at 3 in the morning, Kate cradled in one arm while he read from his tablet with the other. Sometimes he spoke to her in Russian, soft words that Elena didn't understand, but that seemed to soothe their daughter. "What are you telling her?" Elena asked one night, unable to sleep despite Adrian's insistence. "That she's strong, that she's loved, that she has nothing to fear because her parents will protect her." He looked up, Kate still nestled against his chest. "And that she should sleep because her mother needs to rest." "I can't sleep knowing you're up with her." "Then lie down here, we'll keep you company." Elena curled up on the daybed in the corner of the nursery, and the sound of Adrian's voice and Kate's occasional small noises lulled her into something approaching peace. The security remained intense. Two men were always visible on the property, more that Elena couldn't see but knew were there. It should have felt oppressive. Instead, it felt necessary. The world outside still held threats, and Elena was grimly grateful for every precaution. Viktor Petrov's name came up again 4 weeks after Kate came home. Elena overheard a phone conversation, Adrian speaking in clipped Russian, his tone lethal. She caught Viktor's name and a word that might have meant dead or finished. When Adrian ended the call, Elena asked quietly, "Is he a problem again?" "He tried to be. He's not anymore." "What happened?" "He's leaving the country, permanently. His assets have been frozen, his connections severed. He has nothing and nowhere to go." "Did you kill him?" Adrian looked at her steadily. "No, but I made him wish I had." Elena should have been horrified, should have questioned what kind of man she'd tied herself to, what kind of father he'd be to Kate. Instead, she felt a savage satisfaction that the man who'd threatened her daughter was suffering. "Good," she said. Adrian's expression shifted, surprise, then something like relief. "You're not going to lecture me about proportionality? You protected our daughter. That's all that matters." He pulled her close, Kate sleeping between them in her bassinet. "I love you, even when you scare me with how easily you accept my darkness. I love you, even when you scare me with how far you'll go to protect us." They stood like that, a strange family built on violence and hope and stubborn refusal to give up. Kate thrived. She grew steadily, hitting milestones that made the pediatrician nod with approval. Her adjusted age caught up slowly, but she was strong, a fighter, just like Adrian had predicted. Elena returned to work part-time when Kate was 8 weeks old, just a few hours a day, checking on the horses and the leopards, re-establishing her routine. Adrian had hired a full-time nanny despite Elena's protests, an older woman named Rosa who'd raised 5 children of her own and radiated competent calm. "I can take care of my own daughter," Elena had argued. "You are taking care of her. Rosa is backup for when you need to work or sleep or simply be human." Adrian's tone had been firm. "This isn't about you being inadequate. This is about having support." Rosa proved invaluable. She managed Kate's schedule with efficiency that bordered on magical, anticipating needs before they arose. But she also knew when to step back, when Elena or Adrian needed time alone with their daughter. Elena found herself in the leopard enclosure one afternoon, Kate strapped to her chest in a carrier while Zara and Mikhail watched from a respectful distance. The leopards had been wary at first, but curiosity had won out. They approached slowly, sniffing carefully at this tiny new human. "Gentle," Elena murmured, though she wasn't particularly worried. These leopards had been socialized extensively. They understood careful. Zara made a low sound, not quite a purr, but close, and bumped her massive head very gently against Elena's leg. Mikhail sat nearby, watching Kate with golden eyes that seemed almost protective. "You like her," Elena said. "Good. She's going to grow up around you, so you'd better get used to her." Adrian found them there an hour later. He stood at the enclosure entrance, watching Elena sit with their daughter, while 2 leopards lounged nearby like giant house cats. "This is either the safest place in the world for her, or the most dangerous," he observed. "Safest. They'd kill anyone who tried to hurt her." That's a disturbing amount of faith in predators. They're not predators to her, they're family. Adrian entered the enclosure, moving slowly so as not to startle the leopards. They ignored him, accustomed to his presence. He sat beside Elena, his hand coming to rest on Kate's head. "She's going to grow up thinking this is normal," he said. "What, having leopards as bodyguards? Having armed security and exotic animals, and a father who operates in moral gray areas?" Elena leaned against his shoulder. "She'll grow up knowing she's loved and protected. Everything else we can explain when she's old enough to ask questions." "What if she asks questions we can't answer?" "Then we'll figure it out, together, like everything else." They sat in the enclosure while the afternoon sun slanted through the trees, and their daughter slept between them, protected by leopards and love and the fierce determination of 2 people who'd found each other in a storm. The federal investigation quietly disappeared. Elena never learned exactly what Adrian had done, what deals he'd made, or threats he'd issued. She just knew that one day there were federal agents asking questions, and the next there weren't. The properties that had been raided were returned. The warrants were withdrawn. It was over. "How did you make it stop?" Elena asked. "I gave them something bigger. Someone they wanted more than me. Who? Someone who deserved it. Elena let it go. Some answers she didn't need. Life settled into something approaching normal. Adrian spent more time at home, delegating responsibilities to people he trusted. Elena worked part-time, finding balance between her animals and her daughter. Kate grew, her personality emerging. Serious like Adrian, stubborn like Elena, with a tendency to study everything with intense focus. "She's going to be brilliant," Adrian said one evening, watching Kate track a toy with single-minded concentration. She was 4 months old, already showing signs of the person she'd become. "She's going to be a handful," Elena corrected. "Both, definitely both." The threats didn't disappear entirely. Adrian's world would always carry danger. But they learned to manage it, to build safety within the chaos. The security team became familiar faces. The estate became a fortress, but a comfortable one. Elena's diabetes stabilized post-pregnancy, her body returning to something like its old patterns. She was vigilant now, careful in ways she hadn't been before. She had too much to live for to be careless. "I'm proud of you," Adrian told her one night. They were in bed, Kate asleep in the nursery with Rosa on duty. For what? For surviving, for choosing to stay, for being stronger than anyone has a right to be. "I'm not that strong." "You collapsed in a parking lot a year ago. Now you're raising a premature infant while working and managing a chronic illness and accepting that your partner is a criminal. You're stronger than you think." Elena turned in his arms to face him. "You're not a criminal anymore. You're transitioning to legitimate business." "Mostly legitimate. There are still some gray areas." "I can live with gray areas." "Can you?" "Really?" She thought about it honestly. A year ago, she couldn't have imagined this life. Couldn't have conceived of loving someone who operated outside legal boundaries, of raising a child in a world where security was necessary and threats were managed rather than eliminated. But a year ago, she'd been dying. Now she was living. "Yes," she said firmly, "I can live with this. With you. With all of it." Adrian kissed her, slow and deep, and Elena felt the last of her doubts dissolve. This was her life. Complicated, dangerous, strange. But hers. Kate started sleeping through the night at 5 months. Elena woke in a panic the first time it happened, certain something was wrong. She ran to the nursery to find their daughter sleeping peacefully, her chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm of health. "She's fine," Rosa said from her chair in the corner. "Just growing up. She's too young to sleep through the night." "She's ready. You're the one who's not ready." Rosa was right. Elena stood over Kate's crib for another 20 minutes, watching her breathe, before she could convince herself to return to bed. "She slept through?" Adrian asked sleepily. "Yes." "That's good." "I hated it." Adrian pulled her close, understanding without explanation. "She's growing up. We can't stop it." "I want to." "I know. But we can't. All we can do is be here for every moment we're allowed." They lay awake in the dark, listening to the quiet house, and Elena thought about the future. Kate learning to walk, to talk, to ask questions about why their house had guards and their pets were leopards, and their father spoke 5 languages. Kate going to school, making friends, building a life that was hers rather than theirs. It was terrifying and exciting, and so far away it seemed almost imaginary. But it was coming. Every day brought them closer to a future Elena couldn't predict, but was determined to face. "Adrian," she said quietly. "Hmm? Thank you." "For what?" "For finding me. For saving me. For giving me this." His arms tightened around her. "You saved yourself. I just gave you a reason to." "That's not true." "It is. You're the strongest person I've ever met, Elena. You just needed to remember it." She fell asleep in his arms, and for the first time in her life, felt truly safe. The next morning, Kate smiled for the first time. Not gas, not a reflex, but a real smile aimed directly at Adrian while he was changing her diaper. His face transformed, becoming something Elena had never seen before. Pure, uncomplicated joy. "Did you see that?" he asked, his voice thick. "I saw it." "She smiled at me." "She loves you." "She's 4 months old. She doesn't understand love." "She understands you. That's close enough." Adrian lifted Kate carefully, holding her against his chest. Their daughter looked up at him with dark eyes and smiled again, and Elena watched her dangerous, complicated, impossible man fall completely apart with happiness. "We're going to be okay," Elena said, certain of it for the first time. "Yes," Adrian agreed. "We are." Kate turned 6 months old on a Tuesday. Elena marked the occasion by crying into her coffee while watching their daughter sit unassisted for the first time, wobbling but determined, her face scrunched in concentration that was pure Adrian. "She's going to be walking before we know it," Elena said. Adrian looked up from his laptop, saw Kate's achievement, and immediately abandoned whatever he'd been working on. He knelt beside their daughter, his hands hovering close enough to catch her but not touching, letting her find her own balance. "Look at you," he said softly, 6 months old and already refusing help. "I wonder where she gets that," Elena said pointedly. "No idea." Kate toppled sideways. Adrian caught her before she hit the floor, and she laughed, a sound that still felt like a miracle every time Elena heard it. Her daughter was healthy, growing, thriving against odds that had seemed impossible in that NICU. The normalcy of it all sometimes struck Elena as surreal. 6 months ago, she'd been terrified their daughter wouldn't survive. Now her biggest concern was whether Kate was getting enough tummy time and if they should start introducing solid foods early. Well, that and the man who'd appeared on the property 3 days ago. Elena had noticed him during her morning walk to the stables, someone standing just beyond the tree line watching. She'd mentioned it to the security team who'd investigated and found nothing. But Elena's instincts, honed by months of living in Adrian's world, told her something was wrong. "He's back," she told Adrian that evening, after Kate was asleep. "Who?" "The man watching the property. Same location as yesterday." Adrian's expression hardened. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. Marcus said they didn't find anything, but I saw him. Someone's watching us." Adrian pulled out his phone, sent a rapid series of messages. "I'll have additional surveillance set up. If someone's there, we'll find them." "What if it's the feds again?" "Then they're wasting their time. But I don't think it is." His jaw tightened. "I think it's someone with a more personal interest." The surveillance caught him 2 days later. A man in his 40s, ex-military based on the way he moved, with equipment that suggested professional training. He wasn't trying to breach the property, just watching. Cataloging patterns, maybe. Learning routines. Adrian had him picked up that night. Elena didn't ask what happened during the interrogation. She just knew that Adrian left at midnight and returned at dawn with blood on his knuckles and a name. "Dmitry Volkov," he said, washing his hands in their bathroom sink while Elena sat on the edge of the tub. "Former associate. Someone I cut ties with during the restructuring." "What did he want?" "Revenge. Money. To prove he still had power." Adrian dried his hands carefully. "He thought taking Kate would give him leverage against me." Elena's blood went cold. "He was going to take her?" "He was considering it. Now he's not considering anything." "Did you?" "No. But he's going to disappear for a long time. Somewhere without extradition, without resources, without any ability to hurt us." Adrian turned to face her. "It's handled." Elena should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt exhausted. How many more? How many more people are going to see our daughter as a tool to use against you?" "I don't know, but each one I deal with sends a message. Eventually, there won't be anyone stupid enough to try." "And if there is?" "Then I'll handle them too, for as long as necessary." Elena stood, moved to him. "I'm tired, Adrian. Tired of threats and surveillance and men with guns on our property. Kate deserves better than this." "I know, and I'm working on it. But unwinding years of connections and grudges takes time." "How much time?" "I don't know." That was the honest answer, and Elena appreciated the honesty even while hating the uncertainty. She'd known what she was signing up for when she'd stayed. That didn't make living it easier. Kate woke them at 2 a.m, crying with the particular intensity that meant teething. Elena stumbled to the nursery to find Adrian already there, Kate against his shoulder while he paced and murmured in Russian. "I've got her," Elena said. "Go back to sleep." "You were up with her at 11. "So were you." "I sleep less than you do." It was true. Adrian operated on what seemed like 4 hours of sleep a night, functional and alert in ways that defied biology. Elena needed at least 6, or she was useless. She watched him pace with their daughter, watched Kate's cries slowly subside into hiccups and then quiet snuffles. Adrian's hand moved in gentle circles on her back, and Elena felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. "You're a good father," she said quietly. Adrian glanced at her, surprise flickering across his features. "I'm trying to be." "You are. Kate's lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one. Both of you." He stopped, his throat working. "I never thought I'd have this. A family. Something worth protecting that wasn't built on violence and control. You have it now." "I know, and it terrifies me." Elena moved to him, wrapped her arms around both him and Kate. They stood like that in the quiet nursery, a family built from impossible circumstances, and Elena thought about how far they'd come. A year and a half ago, she'd been dying in a parking lot. Now she was standing in a nursery with a man she loved and a daughter she'd fought to bring into the world. The journey had been brutal, but they'd survived it. Kate fell back asleep against Adrian's shoulder. He laid her carefully in the crib, covering her with the blanket that had come home from the NICU. They stood watching her breathe for a moment before returning to their own room. "Dmitri had partners," Adrian said once they were back in bed. Elena's stomach sank. "How many?" "Two that we know of, possibly more. They scattered when we picked him up, but they're still out there." "So it's not over?" "No, but it's manageable. I have people tracking them. Once we locate them, we'll eliminate the threat." "Eliminate how?" Adrian pulled her close. "However necessary. I'm not taking chances with you and Kate." Elena wanted to argue, wanted to demand less violence, more mercy. But she thought about someone planning to take her daughter, to use her as leverage, and found she couldn't summon much compassion for people who'd target a 6-month-old baby. "Okay," she said, "do what you have to do." The partners were found within a week. One fled the country immediately, smart enough to recognize when he was outmatched. The other tried to make a deal, offering information in exchange for safety. "What kind of information?" Elena asked when Adrian told her. "Names, operations, people who've been working against me for years but staying hidden." Adrian's expression was thoughtful. "If what he's offering is legitimate, it could solve a lot of problems. And if it's not legitimate, then he'll regret trying to play me." The information proved genuine. Adrian spent 3 days following leads, unraveling connections, identifying threats that had been operating in the shadows. When he returned, he looked different, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. "It's done," he said. "Really done. The people who wanted to use Kate against me are either gone or neutralized. The investigations are closed. My operations are clean or clean enough." Elena searched his face. "You're sure?" "As sure as I can be. There's always risk. My past doesn't disappear just because I want it to, but the immediate threats are handled." "So we're safe?" "Safer. Safe enough to live without armed guards watching your every move. Safe enough to take Kate to the park without 3 layers of security." He pulled her close. "Safe enough to try being a normal family." Normal. The word felt foreign, but appealing. Elena had almost forgotten what normal felt like. They started small. A trip to the local farmer's market with Kate and a carrier. No visible security, though Elena knew they were there somewhere. Kate grabbed at vegetables with sticky hands while Adrian negotiated prices in Russian-accented English that made the vendors smile. Then a pediatrician appointment at a regular practice instead of Dr. Chen making house calls. Kate charmed the nurse and screamed through her vaccinations. Perfectly ordinary. A playgroup at the library where Elena met other mothers and made awkward small talk about sleep schedules and teething while carefully not mentioning that her daughter had spent her first 3 weeks in the NICU or that her father had a complicated past. "How was it?" Adrian asked when she got home. "Weird. Normal weird." Elena set down the diaper bag. "One woman complained for 20 minutes about her husband not helping with night feedings. I almost said you do all the night feedings, but that felt like bragging. I like the night feedings. Kate and I have conversations. She can't talk. She will. I'm getting her used to my voice so when she does start talking, she'll know I'm listening." Elena's throat tightened with emotion she couldn't quite name. "You're really good at this, being a father." "I'm trying. Every day I'm trying." Kate started crawling at 7 months, her determination to reach forbidden objects outweighing her lack of coordination. Adrian baby-proofed the house with the same efficiency he applied to everything, securing cabinets and covering outlets and removing anything that could possibly be dangerous. She's going to live in a bubble, Elena protested, watching him install yet another safety gate. She's going to live. That's all I care about. Adrian, she needs to explore, to learn. You can't protect her from everything. Watch me. But even Adrian had to concede defeat when Kate figured out how to climb over the baby gates. She'd pull herself up, swing a leg over, and tumble to the other side with a triumphant laugh that suggested she knew exactly how much she was frustrating her father. She's too smart, Adrian said, watching Kate escape for the third time that morning. She's your daughter. What did you expect? Not this. I expected at least a few more months before she started outsmarting me. Elena laughed, scooping up their escaped daughter. Welcome to parenthood. It only gets harder from here. They celebrated Kate's first birthday with a small party at the estate. Rosa helped organize it, inviting a few families from the play group along with Dr. Chen and select members of Adrian's staff who'd become friends rather than employees. Kate sat in her high chair, face covered in cake, while people sang and took photos. She looked bewildered by the attention but happy, her hands clapping along with the music. She's beautiful, Dr. Chen said, appearing beside Elena. Healthy, happy, you've done well. We got lucky. You worked hard. There's a difference. The doctor smiled. I remember when you were in my office, terrified about being pregnant while diabetic. You've come a long way. Elena looked at Adrian across the room, holding court with a toddler from the playgroup, while Kate watched him with obvious adoration. We both have. The party wound down as evening approached. Families left, thanking them for inviting them to such a lovely home. Elena didn't mention that the lovely home belonged to a man who'd built his fortune through morally questionable means. They didn't ask, and she didn't tell. After everyone left, Elena found Adrian in Kate's nursery. Their daughter was asleep in his arms, exhausted from her party, her face still sticky with frosting. We should clean her up, Elena said softly. In a minute. I'm not ready to put her down yet. Elena sat in the rocking chair, and Adrian joined her carefully, Kate still cradled against his chest. They sat together while the room darkened, watching their daughter sleep. A year ago, Adrian said quietly, I was terrified we'd lose her. Every day in the NICU felt like borrowed time. I know, me too. And now she's a year old, walking, almost talking, completely healthy. We're very lucky. It's not luck, it's you, your strength, your stubbornness. You fought for her every day, even when it was hard. Elena reached over, took his hand. We fought for her, both of us. They sat in comfortable silence until Kate started to stir. Adrian carried her to the changing table while Elena got her ready for bed. Together they settled her in her crib, Kate's eyes already drifting closed again. Do you think she'll remember any of this? Elena asked. The hard parts, I mean. The NICU, the threats, the security? I hope not. I hope all she remembers is being loved. She is loved. So much. They left the nursery together, Adrian's arm around Elena's waist. In their own room, they fell into bed exhausted but content. We did it, Elena said. Survived the first year. The hardest year. I don't know. Teenage years are supposed to be rough. Adrian groaned. Don't remind me. I'm already planning security protocols for when she starts dating. She's 1, Adrian. It's never too early to plan. Elena laughed, the sound muffled against his shoulder. You're impossible. You've said that before. I'll keep saying it until it stops being true. So forever. Probably. They fell asleep tangled together, and Elena dreamed of the future. Kate growing up, starting school, asking questions about why their family was different. The conversations they'd have to have about Adrian's past, about the choices they'd made, the challenges ahead, but also the joy. Watching Kate learn and grow, building a life that was stable, if not conventional, creating something good from the ashes of their separate pains. Kate's second birthday came faster than seemed possible. She was talking now, stringing together sentences with determination, if not perfect grammar. Her favorite words were no and mine and daddy, the last one deployed with devastating effectiveness whenever she wanted something Adrian had said she couldn't have. You're spoiling her, Elena said, watching Adrian give in to Kate's demands for ice cream before dinner. It's a small amount, and she said please. She said please and batted her eyelashes at you, which is basically the same as saying please. You're hopeless. I'm a father. There's a difference. Elena watched her daughter eat ice cream with her hands, completely ignoring the spoon Adrian had provided, and felt overwhelming love mixed with mild terror at what the teenage years would bring. The estate had become truly home. Elena had expanded the veterinary clinic, taking on some private clients in addition to caring for the estate's animals. Adrian had successfully transitioned most of his operations to legitimate businesses, though he maintained enough connections to handle problems when they arose. They'd learned to live with the balance, mostly normal, occasionally dangerous, always aware that their past could resurface. But the acute threats had faded. Victor was gone. Dmitri was neutralized. The federal investigation was closed. What remained was manageable. We should get married, Adrian said one evening. They were in the library, Kate asleep upstairs, the house quiet around them. Elena looked up from her book. What? Married. Legally. I want you to have that security, that protection, and I want... He paused, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. I want to make this official. You, me, Kate. A family in every sense. We're already a family. I know, but I want the world to know it too. Elena set down her book. This isn't about romance, is it? This is about legal protection. It's about both. It's about making sure that if something happens to me, you and Kate are taken care of. It's about ensuring no one can question your rights to her or to anything I've built. He moved closer, took her hands. But it's also about wanting to call you my wife, about wanting Kate to grow up knowing her parents are committed to each other in every way. You're serious. Completely serious. Elena thought about it. She'd never been particularly romantic, never dreamed about weddings or marriage, but the practical benefits made sense and the emotional appeal was stronger than she'd expected. Okay, she said. Okay? Yes, let's get married. Adrian pulled her close, kissed her with a thoroughness that suggested they might not make it to the bedroom. Should we have a ceremony? Invite people? God, no. Let's just go to the courthouse. Keep it simple. Simple. I can do simple. They got married 2 weeks later at the county courthouse with Rosa and Dr. Chen as witnesses. Elena wore a dress Adrian had bought, simple and elegant. Kate wore a tiny dress that matched and refused to keep her shoes on. Adrian wore a suit and looked nervous in a way Elena had never seen before. The ceremony took 15 minutes. The judge pronounced them married, Adrian kissed her while Kate clapped and shouted, "Daddy!" And they were officially a family in the eyes of the law. That was the easiest thing we've ever done, Elena said afterward. The easiest and the most important. They celebrated with dinner at home, just the three of them and Rosa. Kate ate spaghetti with her hands and got sauce everywhere. Adrian looked at his new wife and daughter with an expression that made Elena's chest tight. I love you, he said simply. I love you too. Both of you. Kate, oblivious to the significance of the day, demanded more bread and then fell asleep in her high chair, exhausted by the excitement. Life continued. Kate grew, her personality expanding daily. She was stubborn like both of them, intelligent like Adrian, determined like Elena. She loved the leopards, showed no fear of the horses, and had started speaking in mixed English and Russian that confused everyone except her father. The threats never completely disappeared. There were occasional problems. Someone from Adrian's past seeking revenge, a business deal gone wrong, security concerns that required attention. But they were manageable, handled quickly and efficiently, never allowed to touch Kate's daily life. Elena's diabetes remained stable. She'd learned to manage it in a way that felt sustainable rather than punishing. Dr. Chen continued to monitor her, pleased with her progress, no longer concerned that she was slowly killing herself. You look happy, the doctor observed during a routine appointment. I am happy. Good. You deserve it. Elena thought about that on the drive home. Deserved. Did she deserve this life? This strange, complicated, beautiful life she'd built with Adrian? She'd made so many questionable choices, accepted so many compromises, turned blind eyes to things she probably shouldn't have. But she also had Kate, had Adrian, had a home and work she loved and a future that felt possible rather than terrifying. Maybe deserve didn't matter. Maybe what mattered was that she had it and was determined to protect it. Kate started preschool at 3, a small private school that asked no questions about why she arrived and left with security. She made friends easily, her mix of languages and fearless personality making her popular despite her unusual background. She told her teacher that our cats are very big, Elena reported one evening. Adrian looked up from where he was building blocks with Kate. Did the teacher ask for clarification? I said we have Maine Coons. Technically not a lie. Technically very much a lie. Well, I wasn't going to explain about the leopards. Kate looked between them, picking up on the conversation. Zara Big Cat, she announced. Very big cat, Adrian agreed. But we don't tell your teachers about Zara, remember? She's our special secret. Secret, Kate repeated seriously, then went back to her blocks. Elena met Adrian's eyes over their daughter's head. They shared a smile that acknowledged the absurdity of their life, teaching their 3-year-old to keep secrets about the exotic animals on their property while maintaining a facade of normalcy for the outside world. But it worked. They made it work. Kate turned 4, then 5. She started asking questions about why their family was different, why other kids' daddies worked in offices while hers worked from home, why they had so many people around all the time. Adrian answered honestly, within limits appropriate for her age. He explained that he had businesses that needed protecting, that some people didn't like that he was successful, that the security was just to keep them safe. Like Zara protects Mikhail? Kate asked. Exactly like that. Okay. She accepted it with the easy trust of a child who'd never known anything different. Elena watched her daughter grow and wondered what the future held. What would Kate think when she was old enough to really understand her father's past? Would she resent the secrecy, the compromises, the moral gray areas? Or would she understand that sometimes survival required making hard choices, that loving someone meant accepting their darkness along with their light? Stop worrying, Adrian said one night, reading her expression with the ease of long familiarity. I'm not worrying. You're definitely worrying. I can hear you thinking from here. Lena sighed. What if she hates us someday? When she learns the truth about everything? Then we'll deal with it. But Elena, look at what we've given her. Stability, love, protection, a home where she's safe and valued. That counts for something. Does it count enough? I don't know, but it's all we have to offer. Kate burst into their room then, supposed to be asleep but clearly wide awake. Mama, Daddy, I can't sleep. Can I sleep here? Adrian lifted the covers without hesitation. Come on, Kotanok. Kate scrambled between them, her small body warm and solid. She curled against Elena, already drifting off. See? Adrian whispered over her head. She chooses us. Every day she chooses to be here. She's 5. She doesn't have a choice. She will someday, and when she does, I think she'll still choose us. Elena hoped he was right. The years passed. Kate grew from a toddler to a child, her personality solidifying into something remarkable. She was fierce and loving, brilliant and stubborn. Everything Elena and Adrian had contributed mixed into someone entirely her own. The estate became a haven for rescued animals, Elena's practice expanding to include exotic species that others wouldn't touch. Adrian's businesses continued to thrive, each year putting more distance between his present and his past. They had scares, a kidnapping attempt when Kate was 7 that was thwarted by security, a health crisis when Elena's blood sugar dropped dangerously during a particularly stressful week, business rivals who occasionally tested Adrian's defenses. But they survived each challenge. They adapted. They protected what they'd built with the same fierce determination that had brought them together in the first place. On Kate's 10th birthday, Elena found herself in the leopard enclosure with her daughter. Zara and Mikhail were old now, slower, but still majestic. Kate sat between them without fear, scratching behind Mikhail's ears while Zara dozed nearby. Mama, do you think I can be a vet like you? Kate asked. If that's what you want. You can be anything you want. Even if it's weird? Especially if it's weird. The best lives are usually the weird ones. Kate considered this. Our life is pretty weird. It is. But it's good weird, right? Elena looked at her daughter, healthy, confident, surrounded by leopards and asking questions about her future. Yeah, baby, it's very good weird. Adrian appeared at the enclosure entrance. Dinner's ready. And Kate, Your friends will be here soon for your party. Kate jumped up, gave each leopard a careful hug, and ran toward the house. Elena stood more slowly, her body showing signs of age even if her daughter didn't. Adrian waited for her, offering his hand to help her over the threshold. They walked together toward the house, toward the party, and the life they'd built. "We did it," Elena said quietly. "Did what?" "Survived. Built something good. Gave Kate a childhood worth having." Adrian pulled her close. "We're still doing it, every day." "I know, but sometimes I look at her and can't believe we got here. From that parking lot to this. I can believe it. You're the strongest person I've ever met. Of course we got here." Inside, Kate's party was chaos in the best way. Friends from school, neighbors, children of Adrian's business associates who'd become genuine friends. Kate moved through them with easy confidence, secure in her place and her family's love. Later, after the party ended and Kate was asleep, Elena and Adrian sat in the library where so much of their relationship had unfolded. The same books lined the shelves, the same furniture arranged just so. But everything was different now. "Do you regret it?" Elena asked. "Any of it? Regret finding you dying in the rain? Regret giving you a job, falling in love with you, having Kate?" "No. Never. Not even the hard parts? Especially not the hard parts. The hard parts taught us what we were capable of." Elena leaned against his shoulder. "I love you, even when you're impossible. I love you, even when you're stubborn." They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other in a storm and built something lasting from the wreckage of their separate pasts. Outside, the estate's security team made their rounds. In the leopard enclosure, Zara and Mikhail settled for the night. Upstairs, Kate slept peacefully, dreaming of whatever 10-year-olds dreamed about. And in the library, Elena and Adrian held each other and contemplated the future. It wouldn't be perfect. There would be challenges ahead, Kate's teenage years, the inevitable moment when she asked harder questions about her father's past, the ongoing management of threats both known and unknown. But they'd face it together, the way they'd faced everything since that night in the rain when Adrian had refused to let Elena die alone. "We're going to be okay," Elena said, echoing Adrian's words from so long ago. "Yes," he agreed. "We are." And sitting in the quiet library of the home they'd built together, surrounded by evidence of the life they'd created, Elena believed it. They were flawed people who'd made questionable choices and built a family in impossible circumstances. They weren't perfect. They never would be. But they were together. They were fighting to protect what they'd created. They were choosing each other every single day, even when it was hard. And in the end, that was enough, more than enough. It was everything.